factors. Unless those competing demands are met, TikTok's fate in the US remains uncertain. A final word from our first witness, Alan Rosenstein.
So I just think we have to assume that TikTok is, for the foreseeable future, going to continue in this, I sometimes call it Schrodinger's TikTok, the quantum phenomenon of being in two states at once, where TikTok is both banned in the United States, but from a day-to-day basis is perfectly operational.
This inquiry was presented by me, David Baker. The producer was Matt Toulson, the researcher was Maeve Schaffer, the editor was Louise Clark, and the technical producer, James Bradshaw.
That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live downtown with our team in our CBC studios. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. Appreciate having you along on this Wednesday, September 17th. So you're on 89.3 FM, as I mentioned, 990 AM on the app, and today, once again, on YouTube. So speaking of the team, let's say good morning to Brad Lillies, who's back producing our YouTube stream. Also, good morning in our control room this morning to Joshua Tefer, who is helping out with teching. Also, our senior tech on the scene, Mr. Abby Adiyemi, who you'll hear on air covering the forecast. Corey Funk is also here directing the program, and he'll be covering your morning commute. As far as the forecast, mainly cloudy today in Winnipeg, 30% chance of late morning afternoon showers possible for us, and a little bit of fog this morning as well, we're expecting, although the downtown area looks pretty clear right now. Our high in Winnipeg is going to be 20. The high in Brandon today is also 20 degrees, and in Thompson, cloudy with a high of 16. Let's go to Heather Wells. She has your news headlines.
Well, more than 1,000 people gathered outside the Manitoba legislature last night to honor the life of American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk, both a controversial and popular figure, was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. We're going to take you to the Vigil coming up at 6:30. As well, the chief of Sagging First Nation feels vindicated after a new report reveals some athletes experience more than competition when they play. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission is making 71 recommendations after hearing about the prevalence of anti-Indigenous racism, including taunts and bullying in sports. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into current conditions here. There is some light rain falling. I just want to mention in Island Lake this morning. And in Winnipeg, right now it's a little bit misty. Our current temperature in Winnipeg is 17. Thompson's cloudy, 11 degrees. And over in Brandon this morning, it's cloudy and 12. In the first hour of the show, we're going to be talking about the Red River coming alive this weekend. Manitobans are gearing up to take on the Red River Challenge. It's a big, long paddle event, and we're going to hear all about that. In addition, the Bank of Canada is set to make its latest rate decision today. We'll get some analysis coming up on World Report, and then we're going to have a full interview about that coming up in the first hour of the show as well. And as Heather mentioned, over 1,000 people at that vigil here in Winnipeg last night. We also have something on that in the program. Stay with us.
Today on Q.
Canadian superstar Sarah McLachlan is back with a new album, her first in 11 years. She joined me in front of a live studio audience to sing a few songs, to talk about the new record, and about a new documentary that celebrates her all-female music festival, Lilith Fair.
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We will be keeping a close eye on the Bank of Canada this morning. It is expected to cut interest rates today. It would be the first cut since March. The Canadian economy has shown signs of weakness since the trade war with the U.S. began. But as Peter Armstrong reports, the central bank may cut even more before the end of the year.
There are two very different ways to think about the Canadian economy right now. On the one hand, the economy's weathered the U.S. trade war much better than many had expected. The vast majority of Canadian exports remain tariff-free. On the other hand, the economy has clearly weakened. Jobs have been lost. GDP shrank in the second quarter of the year. So economists believe it needs some help.
It's almost a done deal that they will cut interest rates by 25 basis points.
That's Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC. He says the question isn't whether the Bank of Canada will cut rates today, but actually how many times it will cut before the end of the year.
And I think we will see them leave the door open to further interest rate cuts because, we do have an economy that needs stimulating. We need to be able to grow the economy faster to bring the unemployment rate down.
Interest rate cuts provide some cushion for Canadian businesses and households. If debt payments fall a little, maybe businesses can afford to keep employees on staff or even hire and invest. Maybe Canadian consumers can keep on spending. Right now, both businesses and consumers are stretched and concerned that the trade war will bite deeper and drag on longer. A rate cut from the Bank of Canada won't change that, but could help them weather the storm a bit longer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The royals are rolling out the red carpet for U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump and First Lady Melania are in the UK for 2 days. It's Trump's second state visit to Great Britain, an honor given to no other U.S. leader. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing is outside Windsor Castle and joins me now. And Crystal, what are we expecting today?
Well, some people are gathering here on the street near the castle, but people really won't see much in person other than a whole lot of police officers standing around and many, many journalists right from around the world. Everything today is taking place safely behind very high castle walls. It will, however, be a grand occasion. There will be a carriage procession on the castle grounds. The household cavalry with 1,300 troops and 120 horses will be participating. A little bit later, there'll be a fly past with the Red Arrows, as well as American and UK F-35 fighter jets, and of course tonight a state banquet. The Prince and Princess of Wales will make the initial greeting and accompany the U.S. President along with the First Lady to say hello to King Charles and Queen Camilla. Now, we don't yet know if the Queen will attend all of today's events. She has been struggling with a serious sinus infection.
Crystal, not everyone is happy that the Trumps are in town.
Yeah, absolutely. There were large demonstrations here in Windsor last night. 4 people were taken into custody, suspected of being involved with projecting a large image of the U.S. president and the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein up on the castle. Trump is not very popular with everyone here. 2 ladies from the community I chatted with, Anne and Barbara, said they don't want him here, and they say the government and the royal family know that he is deeply unpopular.
No, I don't like him. They're all extreme right-wing and nasty people as far as I'm concerned.
What about you? You're born and raised here. Are you opposed to the idea of Donald Trump having a second state visit and spending the day here?
I'm not interested in Trump, not at all.
Now, there are others here who do support the U.S. president, and they were hoping with this unprecedented second state visit, it will help the UK secure more trade agreements and eventually provide stability around tariffs, and that will protect jobs and help grow the economy.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
The CBC's Crystal Gomansing outside Windsor Castle. Tens of thousands of people are trying to get out of Gaza City. The main route out of the city is jammed. Vehicles are overloaded. They're sharing the roadway with bicycles and people pushing carts packed with belongings. They're all trying to get somewhere safer. Israel's military is pushing towards the center of Gaza City. The ground offensive is intense. The IDF says it has struck more than 150 targets in Gaza City since yesterday. It says this campaign will eliminate Hamas's last major stronghold. The Israeli military estimates 350,000 Palestinians have left the city. An estimated 1 million people were living there. Israel has temporarily opened another evacuation corridor. A German man considered the main suspect in the Madeleine McCann case has been released from prison. The 3-year-old girl disappeared from a resort in Portugal 18 years ago. Her parents were dining nearby. The suspect is Christian Bruckner. He was never charged in the McCann case due to lack of evidence. Bruckner has been serving a 7-year sentence for an unrelated sexual assault. British Columbia Premier David Eby will be promoting BC Resources projects today in Ottawa. He's going to sit down with Prime Minister Mark Carney a little later. As Katie DeRosa reports, Eby wants Ottawa to focus on shovel-ready projects instead of another oil pipeline.
BC Premier David Eby heads to Ottawa with one key request.
So we get our fair share.
Eby will meet with Prime Minister Mark Carney 1 week after the PM announced that 2 of the 5 proposed nation-building projects are in British Columbia. Phase 2 of LNG Canada in Kitimat and the expansion of a gold and copper mine in northwestern BC. Eby will try and put other BC projects on Carney's radar, including an expansion at the Port of Vancouver.
If you want to build an economy that is less dependent on the United States, you have to look west.
An oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's north coast was not on the initial list of nation-building projects. Carney has not ruled it out, however. Eby says there are no proponents for an oil pipeline and, like the Trans Mountain pipeline, would require tens of billions in taxpayer dollars.
And my message to the Prime Minister will be, whatever you got to do with Alberta, I get it, but let's be honest with ourselves. If you want projects that are at final investment decision, there's only one place to look, which is in British Columbia.
University of British Columbia political scientist Stuart Prest says the Prime Minister must stick-handle the competing interests of BC and Alberta.
Given the interest in a pipeline, there may yet be interest in seeing one of those put onto the next wave of projects to be fast-tracked.
Carney is expected to release the next tranche of major projects later this fall. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The former residence of Canada's Consul General in New York has now been on the market for more than a year, and it still hasn't sold. So $2 million has been taken off the asking price. It's now listed at $7.9 million US. That's nearly 11 million Canadian dollars. Global Affairs Canada bought a new apartment to serve as the official residence last summer. The new place is located on Billionaires Row near Central Park. It cost $9.1 million. Climate-driven heat is leading to more days of dangerous temperatures. That is the finding in a new report out this morning from a climate science nonprofit. It shows more people around the world have experienced risky temperatures this summer, including here in Canada. Science reporter Anand Ram has more.
For more than a few days in Toronto this summer, umbrellas weren't being used for rain. From shopping bags to their own hands, people hid from the sun and the oppressive heat.
It definitely feels like it's been getting hotter, so I guess it's a little bit worrisome in general.
Now, a new analysis is quantifying just how much potentially dangerous heat the world went through. In the last 3 months, nearly 1 billion people went through 30 or more risky heat days. Christina Dahl is Vice President of Science at the U.S. nonprofit Climate Central.
We defined risky heat as hotter than 90% of the temperatures you typically experience. And that's to accommodate. We actually adapt to some extent to the environment we live in.
In other words, how people handle the heat in St. John's isn't the same in Sao Paulo. The report found Canadians went through 39 risky heat days on average, but you can blame climate change for adding 2 weeks to that total. Hussein Banakdari is with the University of Ottawa.
Climate change is reshaping the odds of daily weather in Canada, and people feel it most directly through extreme heat.
But beyond climate change loading the dice for hotter summer days, he says the heat also feeds into a loop of adding more carbon to the atmosphere.
Heat waves means drought condition. Drought condition lead us to the wildfire. Wildfire, CO2 production. CO2 production increase significantly, the climate change.
Meaning this past summer's heat could be felt next year too. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. If you like the World Report podcast, please tell a friend. It helps us spread the word.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and welcome to your morning show here on CBC on Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa with our team here on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, but also on the app and back on YouTube today. Nice to see you. It is Wednesday morning, September 17th, and it's a little foggy out there. We're going to get a full forecast look in a moment at Winnipeg and the rest of Manitoba. Well, we're going to hear this hour about something fun. The Red River Challenge is happening this weekend. Manitobans will gear up to take it on over the course of 2 days. It's a long paddle. We're going to hear about this year's event, so stay tuned. Also, to serious matters, you just heard about the Bank of Canada, some analysis on World Report about what they're going to say today as they make their latest interest rate decision and what they're going to be weighing. So we will get into that conversation deeply with Viet Vu, who's always really good at making this plain and understood for all of us. And then coming up at 10 to 7, more on Lilith Fair and the new documentary that's coming out today on CBC. As someone who was at Lilith Fair in 1999 in Edmonton, really looking forward to that. We're going to have a talk with the producer this hour about the access they got to all kinds of videos and images from this. It was really well documented. Also, the women that were forefront in doing that, all those artists, Sarah McLachlan, Deborah Cox, they held press conferences every day after this to talk about the impact at the time. So CBC had access to that footage and they were putting it together. So it's going to be quite a doc. We'll hear about it. Right now, let's turn our attention to other news headlines. Heather Wells is in to tell us what's been happening around Manitoba and what happened overnight. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, more than 1,000 people outside the Manitoba legislature last night to honor American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk, a controversial figure, was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. We're going to hear from some people who were at last night's vigil here in Winnipeg. And family and friends are grieving the loss of a Winnipeg couple killed by an alleged impaired driver on Saturday. The victims have been identified as 31-year-old Igor Popov and 25-year-old Carrie Bonner. Police say they were hit by a pickup truck that veered onto the shoulder of Kenaston near IKEA. There is a sacred fire for the couple, and we're going to hear from family and friends coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, Abby Adeyemi's in with our weather forecast today. It looks like some fog's developing in places.
Yeah, fog developing in places. We're talking about in the southern parts of the province. We're looking at towards the U.S. border. We see some foggy conditions there. And also around the Brandon area, we have a bit of foggy conditions also in that part. But across board, we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions with a pocket of sunshine. And some areas will be seeing slim chances of showers. And those foggy conditions we spotted in some regions down south should be lifting as we get through the mornings. We're going to see mild conditions overall with just a touch of humidity in the southern regions. Winnipeg, right now, we are currently around 16 degrees. We saw foggy conditions reported at the airport at this time. As we move through the morning, the skies will stay mostly cloudy. There's a slim chance of showers in the forecast for Winnipeg late this morning and again in the afternoon period. But once this foggy conditions clears away, and it's going to feel a little cool and damp as we start the day, and temperatures will begin to climb to around 20 this afternoon. In other regions, we're also seeing temperatures between 12 and 16 to 18 degrees in most regions across. But Churchill right now is at 7 degrees. Winnipeg, once again, 16.
Do you know what I did last night, you guys? Corey Funk's in studio. And
bring it on.
I was in the air. I watched the premiere of This Hour Has 22 Minutes on CBC. But what was funny is they were talking, funny, not funny, but I mean, in the show, it's funny. They're showing Mark Carney announcing all the housing projects and the capital projects. And then they said, he's calling it like tranche one. The first tranche is being announced now. And he said the second tranche will come before the Grey Cup. And then they came out of it and they said, first of all, when's the Grey Cup?
Really?
And then they said, second of all, and remember, this is a funny satire show. They were like, second of all, hot tip, if you want to be a man of the people, maybe don't use the word tranche.
True.
I've never used the word tranche, although I think it's a good word.
Yeah.
I think it's a good word. Let's find out what's going on in the first tranche of traffic, if you will, at 6:14. Probably not a lot, Corey.
Yeah, not too traunchy out there. I don't even know how to use it. Haven't heard of any major issues out there so far this morning. But if you do see something going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, we do have more analysis of what might be happening today with interest rates in the Bank of Canada, because after holding rates steady for months, the Bank of Canada may cut interest rates today. That's the thinking. Inflation rose slightly last month. It remains under 2%, though. The economy is slowing, in part because of trade tensions with the U.S., and this potential for a cut also comes as many Canadians are struggling with living costs and uncertain job markets. And of course, we did have the poverty report out yesterday. Now, to talk about his analysis of this and what might be happening today, Viet Vu is with us, Manager of Economic Research at the DAIS at Toronto Metropolitan University. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. I know Manitoban just want to talk about interest rates with their morning coffee.
Sounds like a good topic. As long as it's not going to be stressful later today, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, since the beginning of the year, the bank has actually signaled to us that they've been waiting to understand the impact of the tariffs on the economy before resuming their rate cuts that they've promised. Well, the signals have arrived, and it's now fairly clear that the Canadian economy is weakening because of US-Canada trade relations. We've now seen a contraction of GDP in the second quarter and a decline in new jobs creation. The additional signal that came yesterday is that inflation continues to be stable, which allows the bank to be confident that dropping the interest rates now will not worsen inflation significantly, while potentially helping the economy.
Can you sort of elaborate a bit for people that don't follow this or understand it? Like listeners might be thinking, how does it work? Like how do interest rates cuts actually help the economy when growth is slowing, as you've outlined?
Absolutely. So there's a technical answer and there's an interesting answer. The technical answer is that when the economy is slowing down, you want to make money cheaper to borrow to spur economic activity. The interest rate is the price at which you can borrow money. And the lower that price is, the more you're likely to borrow, to spend, or invest and stimulate the economy. The more interesting answer, though, is that it's all about trust and confidence. The Bank of Canada has a lot of trust that they're operating independently of the government and that they know what they're doing to stabilize the economy. So, in fact, the simple act of explaining clearly what they're doing actually helps show up business confidence, which itself leads to economic stimulus.
How much pressure is the Bank of Canada under Viet to respond to what the U.S. Federal Reserve is doing down south?
I mean, look, I think from a policy standpoint, in that narrow sense, right? I'm sure it's something that they make note of, but it isn't something that keeps them up at night. Perhaps not to the same level as they observed Donald Trump tweeting, and not to the level that the political independence of the US Federal Reserve is being threatened right now. They keep track of the policy decisions because whatever happens in the US economy will impact Canada. But the Canadian economy is still an independent market, and the two central banks have diverged in the past. Most recently, the Bank of Canada started lowering interest rates months before the US Federal Reserve did because inflation eased more quickly here than in the States. I will admit, though, that these divergences tend to be minor with the same general direction, but it's not the result of coordination, and more the result of them observing many similar signals.
Canadians obviously are worried about the cost of living. I outlined the poverty report card that came out yesterday, and people are spending so much of their income just on, food, housing, shelter. There's little left. Will a rate cut help people feel any relief, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with so many Canadians struggling with cost of livings right now, right? But it's actually a bit of a misnomer that I do want to address. The central bank is helping people even when they're raising rates. It sounds silly, but hear me out here. When the central bank is raising interest rates, they're trying to prevent inflation from hurting Canadians, as we saw between the 2022 and 2023 period. And when they're lowering interest rates, it means that the economy isn't doing too well and that they're trying to prevent a recession from happening or from it being too deep. So the reality is the central bank is always using its arsenals to ensure that the economy and the people in it are doing well. Sometimes that results in a cut, and sometimes that results in an increase in the interest rate. So it's really important that the bank is able to take sometimes potentially unpopular decisions to help with the economy. We give the bank a narrow mandate, and we allow them to use their tools as needed to fulfill that mandate.
Just before you go this morning, what should Canadians watch for, do you think, in the months ahead that could affect their wallets?
I mean, the big date is going to be November 4th, because that's when the federal budget will be dropping, and it's going to be an important one. And that's because while the Bank of Canada controls monetary policy, the government controls fiscal policy, the other side of macroeconomic policy. Normally, in an economic downturn, the government needs to step in to fill some of the spending gaps. But with the current fiscal context, it means that the public expects the government to be spending less, not more. So it will be interesting to see what the Prime Minister and his cabinet prioritizes to balance out this public pressure for austerity, if you will, while ensuring fiscal policy still supports a weakening economy. Beyond that, understanding what happens to US trade relations and Kusma renegotiations will be crucial, not just for Canada's medium-term outlooks, but for signals on what the Bank of Canada might do in the month ahead.
Great analysis ahead of whatever we're going to hear today. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Viet Vu is Manager of Economic Research at the DAIS at Toronto Metropolitan University. Still ahead, business news at 6:40.
The Polaris Music Prize. 10 outstanding Canadian artists, 10 amazing albums. And new this year, 5 nominees for the SOCAN Polaris Song Prize. Join us for the 2025 Polaris Music Prize concert and award ceremony live from Massey Hall in Toronto, featuring performances by the shortlisted artists, including PB Club, Nemesis, Ribbon Skirt, Eve Jarvis, and more. Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Join the live stream at cbcmusic.ca/Polaris.
Well, in fact, you might have watched this last night because the Polaris Music Prize was handed out. In case you missed World Report, Eve Jarvis won the prize for his record, All Cylinders. He's been longlisted twice for the prize. This year, first time on the short list and then first ever win. So we're going to hear some of the award-winning music and a bit of what Eve Jarvis had to say last night coming up in the show. You're listening to Information Radio, your morning show, live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. And if you are by the Red River this weekend, you might see a parade of paddlers making their way down the river. The Red River Paddle Challenge is on. It makes its return. It's going to be this year, though, broken up into 2 days. So paddlers will have a chance to compete in 2 different lengths of challenges. 44 kilometers goes from Winnipeg to Lockport. And then the bigger one is a 100-kilometer loop. Let's find out more about it. Brad Friesen's on the line for a couple minutes to tell us about it this year. Hi, Brad.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. I know you're the organizer here. Why'd you guys split it into 2 days?
We had a lot of success with the 44-kilometer, and paddlers were, oddly enough, asking for more. So we said, okay, let's offer a longer course, but instead of just doing it in one big shot, let's break it up over 2 days. So is it 50 and 50? Roughly. Day one's a bit longer. It's 56, and then day 2 is 44.
What will people? I know registration's closed. So what kind of vessels will people be on the river with?
So the race is open to anything you can paddle or row. A lot of canoes, tandem canoes this year. We've got kayaks, stand-up paddle boards. What else? Rowboats, surf skis. Pretty much anything.
What's the response been like? I know we talk every year ahead of the event. Are the participants coming from all over the place?
Oh yeah, this year especially we have a lot more people from down south, from Minnesota, South Dakota, Wisconsin. A lot of canoers down in those areas, and they're coming up to join us this year. And across Canada, as always, we've got Alberta, BC, Ontario, Quebec. So we're drawing in a lot of people.
How do people hear about it? Is it sort of word of mouth, or is the paddling community growing?
A bit of both. I'd say paddling community has grown, especially here in Manitoba. But I think a lot of it is just word of mouth. The paddling community it's not a large community. When people hear about an event, they go to events and they have a great time. They tell their friends, and it just kind of gets spread around that way.
In terms of registrations themselves, even though we talked about the interest being wide, I understand the number is a bit down, but you have some thinking around why that might be.
Yeah, talking to some people, it is down slightly compared to other years. It ebbs and flows, but from talking to some of the paddlers, a lot of people here in Manitoba didn't get the time on the water this year due to the smoke from all the fires earlier in the season, and they just didn't feel likely they're competitive people and they want to go out and give it their all, and they just didn't get enough time in the water to train for it.
Got it. How many people do you have participating?
We're sitting about 90 people.
And what are your future plans, Brad, given that this year, people wanted to paddle longer, you've got it into 2 days. Are you already thinking ahead now?
Oh, yeah. We've got big plans for next year's event, actually. It'll be in September as well. It's actually next year is the 100th year anniversary of an old canoe race that used to take place on the Red River. Back in the day when we had the old Winnipeg Canoe Club before it burnt down. It was the paddlers there would load up their canoe with 50 pounds of gear and paddle up to Lockport, camp out, And then they would continue on portaging the locks up to Fort Garry and then turn around and paddle back to Winnipeg. So we're looking at combining elements of that race with next year's paddle challenge. And it will be similar distances. It'll be the 44 are typical, as well as a 100-kilometer variance of what we have now versus what they had 100 years ago.
Oh, that's so fun. That's going to be so fun. Meantime, get through this weekend first and enjoy it. Thanks for being up early and telling us about this year's event.
Thanks for having us.
That is Brad Friesen, paddle enthusiast and organizer of the Red River Paddle Challenge coming up next weekend. Registration is closed, as I mentioned, for this year, but you can still check it all out. You can still cheer people on, and you can also stay updated for future events on their social media page at Red River Paddle Challenge. Time right now, 6:26 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and as you've been hearing, today's quite a day for Sarah McLachlan and a number of other woman artists who were part of Lilith Fair. There's a documentary coming out about how groundbreaking that was for women artists, and if you lived through that time, and I did, I was probably about, 21, 22 years old or something. It was really, really significant what they did when they took this on the road and they created this festival. We'll hear more about that still ahead in this hour, but right now, how about a bit of music from Sarah McLachlan? Have to play this one. This is Building a Mystery on CBC.
That's when the energy comes and the dark side's light and the vampires roam. You stretch your ass to wearing your suicide poem and a cross from a faith that died before Jesus came. You're building a mystery. You sleep with voodoo dolls and you won't give up the search for the ghosts in the halls. You wear sandals in the snow and a smile that won't wash away. Can you look out the window without your shadow getting in the way? You're so beautiful with an angel charming and so careful when I'm in your arms, 'cause you're building a mystery. Choosing so carefully. You woke up screaming aloud, a prayer from your secret God to feed off our fears and hold back your tears. Oh, you give us a tantrum, and I know it all grin. Just when we need one, when the evening's through. You're a beautiful dead man. You're setting up your razor while you're shining, 'cause you're building a mystery.
Sarah McLachlan and one of her classics. She has so many. Building a Mystery. She is going to be on Q today, and we're going to hear her performance of some of her new music, And still ahead in the next half hour, we'll hear more about the doc that is coming out today that chronicles Lilith Fair and talks about the significance of that all these years later. Well, just before my local friends call me, I know in 99 during Lilith Fair, I was 25. Not 21. Time goes fast, though, and so does the impact and growth of women's music. What a time we live in. Still ahead, we have business news. So we are going to be hearing more from Hallie Cottenham. Whether you call it Kusma or USMCA or the new NAFTA, it is about to go under the microscope. So we will hear more about what is happening, the latest with that coming up. And just to dip into what's happening in your forecast right now, I know it's really early ahead of 6:30, but 788-3093 is where you can call us. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, mostly cloudy, and that's the way it's going to be, and markedly cooler in Winnipeg today than yesterday, a high of just 20, which still is above seasonal. More than 1,000 people turned out for a vigil at the Manitoba legislature last night.
Sing grace, how sweet the sound.
The vigil to honor Charlie Kirk. The American conservative activist was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. Winnipeg's Lisa Chenier says she went for her daughter and son. She says they're part of the young demographic Kirk spoke to.
I don't want the kids to fear going out and perhaps speaking about something that they're passionate about. So it's about so many things, but ultimately about the freedom of just speech and peaceful conversation.
22-year-old Tyler Robinson faces multiple charges in connection to the murder. Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty. The family of a Manitoba woman killed by an alleged impaired driver says she was a wonderful person who didn't deserve what happened. Carrie Bonner and her longtime boyfriend Igor Popov died Saturday. Winnipeg police say they were hit by a pickup truck that veered onto a shoulder of Keniston near IKEA. Bonner's and Popov's family and friends are holding a sacred fire for them. Julia Bonner says she's devastated after losing her sister.
It's going to be really hard to say goodbye to someone like that you grew up with your whole life. And people who go behind the wheel under the influence, it's really horrible because you don't know what could happen. Keep your family members close and everyone you love, tell them that you love them every single day.
Kuldeep Singh Gill faces 2 counts each of dangerous driving causing death while impaired, and failing to stop at the scene. The founder of an Indigenous youth volleyball program in Manitoba hopes a new report sparks change. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission has released a review of the country's athletic system. It spoke to Indigenous participants who shared stories of slurs and bullying. Jamie Menzies says the findings validate those who may not have felt welcome or safe while playing.
On the surface, mainstream sport would not appear to be exclusionary to Indigenous people, but it's more about acceptance and safety and feeling welcome in spaces.
Menzies says the document and its 71 recommendations should serve as a call to action. Developers and urban planners in Winnipeg have questions about where the federal government plans to put hundreds of new homes. Ottawa says 4,000 modular homes will be built at 6 sites, including in Winnipeg. University of Winnipeg urban geography professor Gino D'Estasio says the federal government has to identify appropriate land. He says if it's hundreds of single-family homes, it would be best to have one large property which suits residential use.
If we're talking about identifying small bits and pieces throughout the city, that can still have some impact, but it's a bit more time consuming to identify, convert those lands. So hopefully goal number 1 is to really get some signature properties that make sense for quality residential homes to be built.
D'Estasio says a site like the former Capyong Barracks would be ideal. The Bank of Canada makes its September interest rate setting this morning, and after holding steady at 2.75% through the spring and summer, most analysts agree the central bank is about to change course. A 25-point basis cut is expected as the bank looks to respond to a weakening economy and a slowing labor market. To London.
Mr. President, it's going to be a historic day. That'll be great. Thank you all very much.
On a state visit to Britain, U.S. President Donald Trump arriving last night at Winfield House. This morning, Prince William and Princess Catherine will welcome him to Windsor Castle. From there, it's an audience with King Charles and a series of events. Tomorrow, Trump goes to Chequers for a meeting with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, things are back to normal in Victoria Beach this morning after a bomb scare on a ball field late yesterday. People were warned to stay away from the beach's community center baseball diamond after police said something resembling a Second World War era bomb was found. Victoria Beach Police Chief Mike McKinnon says the item may have been part of a package dropped off for a rummage sale.
Some of the volunteers and organizers recognize that this is a dangerous item and the authorities need to deal with it, so we are called in. So never hesitate to call the authorities to come in and deal with something like this. Even if you're not sure, it's okay. We will come and help out.
McKinnon says a bomb disposal unit from the Canadian Armed Forces x-rayed the item and determined it was a roughly 50-year-old practice bomb designed for training that releases smoke on impact. You can find more news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So interesting, though, right?
Yeah, and no kidding, you would be really worried when you found something like that.
Yeah. I saw that pop up on Facebook yesterday, and I immediately sent it to our producer, and I was like, is this fake? Is this like, what is this? He's like, no, we verified it. We're checking it in the newsroom. And of course, the story today. But yeah, when that popped up as a, stay away from the ball diamond, right when they first found it, it was quite something.
Absolutely.
All right, Heather, thank you.
Thank you.
Heather Wells, making sense of all kinds of things in our news center. All right, let's make sense of the weather. Abby Adiyami's in again. Hello.
Hello, Marcy. Cloudy day across board. A mix of sun and clouds will peep in, and it may feel a bit humid at some spot, but it's cooler than yesterday. And the fog we're waking up to in Winnipeg and down to the U.S. border will be dissipating as we get into the morning. For the Red River and Pembina Valley region, we're seeing temperatures hover between 12 and 16 degrees at this time. Winnipeg is the Fox is reading 16 under some misty conditions. We will see a cloudy day later, and then a mix of sun and clouds. Slim chance of showers in the forecast this morning into the afternoon period. The winds will shift from the north this afternoon and may feel from mild to breezy. Temperatures will warm to 20 degrees. In the Westman region, Brandon and surrounding areas, we're looking at 11 degrees. Clear skies we do have there. Today will bring a mix of sun and clouds as we get into the morning. There's a good chance of showers and a risk of thunderstorms to go with that this morning. Winds will turn northeast by the afternoon period. Feeling a bit breezy at some point, warming up to 20 degrees for the Westman region. In the Interlake region, Gimli all the way down to Gimli and surrounding areas, Sour Creek and surrounding areas, we see 16 degrees at this time. Mostly cloudy conditions we have there. We have a slim chance of showers in the forecast with fog patches also spotted in that region. That should lift this morning. We'll see the winds becoming north later. Temperature around 20 degrees. That's also the high there. For Dauphin and surrounding region, all the way down to Roblin, we're seeing 15 degrees at this time. Mostly cloudy with a risk of thunderstorms. We will see these cloudy conditions stay through the morning into the afternoon. That would come with a slim chance of showers, and the winds will be shifting to the northeast. Temperatures will get close to 20 degrees for that part of the province. The powerful influence surrounding areas, we're looking at 12, 13. Clear skies we have there. Then some cloudy conditions will roll in. Highs will be around 17 degrees. Thompson, this is having more like a mostly cloudy skies in that part of the province. 10 degrees at this time. Expect this cloud cover to hold for much of the day. Some sunny conditions will break through, but it's mostly going to be cloudy. Highs will be near 16 degrees. While for Churchill, starting off at 7 degrees at this time, mostly cloudy skies. Conditions will stay cool and damp for that part of the province. There's a slight chance of drizzle and showers into the overnight period. We'll see temperatures just get close to 11 degrees for Churchill this morning. So it's not really going to be that hot and humid a day across board. It's more like on the cooler side. And the south will see highs near 20 degrees.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
Bit of a shift from the last couple of days we've had. All right, Corey Funk is in with your morning commute news.
And not too much news to report right now. It's been pretty busy, pretty not too busy out there. But if you do see something going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
That leaves us space to talk about your wardrobe change.
My wardrobe change?
Yeah, you're wearing the flower hat for like a month out of the summer, and then you're like, you're into the fall now.
It's getting a little grayer, getting a little bit more neutral colors. Yeah, more sweaters now. I wore pants today instead of shorts.
Oh, it's the season.
It is the season.
Do you get sad when you have to put pants on your shorts, guy? Like, what's your...
I generally am sad.
Okay, that sounds really
I'm
wrong.
really sad usually when I have to put pants on. Yeah, it usually means I have to go somewhere, which is pretty tough for me.
You'd rather be pantless, we know.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather, that's my...
But you know how Heather always gets sad when she has to take her sandals off and wear socks? It's like she pushes it. Do you push the shorts?
Fall is actually, I'm like a cozy up kind of guy. Like, I'm actually pretty happy that I get to kind of wear a little more layers.
You always see those people in Manitoba who just push it. Like they're going to be in their sandals and their shorts. And like if they can do it into November, they're doing it.
There's always someone in shorts at any given time in Manitoba.
Yeah. Well, today you probably could still pull it off.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Nice to see you in the Browns.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about what's going on with more serious matters. Hallie Cottonham's been standing by. She's here with our business report today, as always. Hello.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's talk about the big day today. Borrowers, economists, politicians, interest rate decisions in the U.S. and in Canada.
Yeah, both expected to lower rates by 0.25%. The idea is to stimulate the economy by making it less expensive to borrow money. So let's start with the Fed. It hasn't budged on its rate since December. And that's really upset the U.S. president, who's called the Fed chair a, quote, real dummy. Trump has accused Jerome Powell of holding back the economy by leaving interest rates too high for too long. But analysts say the Fed held off adjusting those rates because it was worried that Trump's policies might cause inflation to flare up. Those policies being the tax cuts, the tariffs, mass detentions of migrant workers. And in fact, inflation has been higher than the Fed's 2% target. And then came those jobs numbers in June, July, and August, Marcy, a lot worse than expected. So today's announcement early this afternoon is designed to pump the gas a little in the U.S. economy. And here in Canada, everyone's expecting a quarter-point cut as well. Perhaps a solution for our own slowing economy. We've talked on the show about the drop in GDP, unemployment rising to more than 7%. So a cut of 25 basis points will bring the benchmark rate to 2.5%. And that decision coming down in a couple of hours, after which the governor, Tiff Macklem, will explain how the Bank of Canada came to that decision.
All right, so 8:45 is our time here in Manitoba for that. Okay. So let's go to a trade agreement that's significant to our province because most of our goods are under Kusma or USMCA or the new NAFTA, whatever you're calling it. It's about to go under the microscope.
Yeah, the U.S. has started the process of reviewing the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. A preliminary Federal Register notice was posted online late yesterday, Marcy. It will be published today. So now there'll be 45 days of consultation, then in November, a public hearing, and then the formal review in the new year. All of these steps are required under American law. Why is this significant? Well, it is the first official step towards renegotiating the deal, which was signed during the first Trump administration. Trump has, in turns, praised it, then complained about it. He has described it as transitional. In fact, trade analysts are saying that really Trump's looking for a renegotiation rather than a review or a tinkering. So Kusma, as you say, important to us in a lot of ways. It has shielded Canada and Mexico from the worst of Trump's tariffs and duties, although, of course, we're still being pummeled by separate tariffs on steel, aluminum, copper, cars, canola, etc. Prime Minister Mark Carney will travel to Mexico this week to meet up with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico ahead of these talks.
Now, you have some news about some lucrative prizes in the arts, and it's the morning for that, right?
Yes. In fact, Montreal Yves Jarvis last night won the Polaris Music Prize for his fifth full-length album. It's called All Cylinders. The jury named it as the best Canadian album of the year based on artistic merit. So he wins 30 grand. And this morning, the Writers' Trust of Canada announced it's deepening its purse for its fiction prize, increasing it to $100,000. It says the winner of the Atwood Gibson Writers' Trust Fiction Prize will receive $70,000, up from $60,000, while the runners-up will get $7,500 instead of $5,000. So to talk about inflation, the prize is named, of course, for the co-founders Margaret Atwood and Graham Gibson, and sponsored by the Balsillie Family Foundation of Blackberry fame.
Interesting, because those literary prizes are going up, and in fact, the Polaris Prize last year was 50 grand, and this year it's 30. And they said that's because they had challenges with their donors and such. So they've gone the opposite direction.
Interesting.
It's probably an art story in that one somewhere.
For sure.
Before you go, this morning, Alberta's premier has made a change that's getting mixed reviews.
Yeah, well, the oil and gas sector seems to like it. Environmentalists, not so much. Alberta is changing its industrial carbon tax program to let companies avoid paying provincial fees for emissions. Instead, companies will have to invest in their own emissions reduction projects. Premier Smith says the change is going to support economic growth while ensuring that companies do the work to lower emissions, and that it was a result of consultations that she had and the government had with hundreds of folks in the oil sands. So the company, or rather the change, will likely come into effect this fall. Now, the Pembina Institute is criticizing the move, warning that it could lead to double counting of reduction efforts. The Canadian Climate Institute says it'll mean more harmful emissions going into the atmosphere.
And real quick, you actually have something fun to end. You have audio clues?
Yeah, I'm going to play for your listeners 2 little snippets of audio, and I want to see if you can figure out the link between them. Here's the first one.
Are you kidding? I I practically raised my sister's 2 kids when she was suing her chiropodist.
Okay, that was the first one. Now here's the second. Take a listen.
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad. To prove to everyone that I worked. What?
Any guesses, Marcy?
Well, I know that's the nanny, right? Fran
Yes.
Drescher. I don't
That's
know. I know the second one, but I don't know it.
Okay, so you're right. That was the first was Fran Drescher, a scene from The Nanny, followed by a scene from the movie Rudy, starring Sean Astin.
Yeah.
Astin is replacing Drescher as the Hollywood union exec. SAG-AFTRA is the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, representing 160,000 actors and entertainers. And they've selected Astin to succeed Drescher as their president. Astin, best known for his roles in the movie Rudy, and perhaps a different demographic would recognize him from The Lord of the Rings. But fun fact this morning, he's also the son of the late Academy Award winner Patty Duke.
All right. Thanks very much, Hallie.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Hallie Cotton with Business News. And speaking of things back in the day, stay with us because in a moment we're going to take you back musically. Right now in Winnipeg, fog, 16 degrees, winds are calm. Right now, let's take you down south. Although this happened in the United States, some Manitobans are mourning the death of American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. As you may have heard in the news, over 1,000 people gathered at the steps of the Legislative Building to commemorate the controversial founder of Turning Point USA. At the Vigil last night here, both the American and Canadian flags were seen as his supporters lit and held up candles. Kirk was critically injured and later died after a single gunshot struck him as he spoke during an outdoor campus event at Utah Valley University last week. CBC's Rosanna Hempel was at last night's Vigil, as you may have heard in the news, and she spoke with Winnipeggers. Here's a bit more of what they had to say, starting with Lisa Chenier.
It was so emotional to see what had happened last week. Charlie was one of those guys, whether you agreed with him or not, that just impacted youth across the world. My daughter's youth, my son's a young man, and it was important to come out today to say, you know what, conversation can happen peacefully. It didn't happen peacefully last week. He was using venues like the university to spread, in my opinion, and maybe not everybody's opinion, the truth. And it ended up in devastation. And I don't want the kids to fear going out and perhaps speaking about something that they're passionate about. So it's about so many things, but ultimately about the freedom of just speech and peaceful conversation. So we came out for that. Yeah.
Do you mind me asking how old your kids are?
My daughter is 13 and my son's 21. Okay. So.
And if it's okay asking, how did you talk to them about what happened last week?
When we found out, it was shocking and confusing and emotional, and I wanted to make sure that they were okay. Everybody responds to something like this so differently, and I just wanted to give them the space to express how they were feeling. And I think everybody went through the same emotion: confusion, shock, anger, sadness. And then, you take those few days to kind of let it sink in. And they were really good about it, and I think them and their friends too had open conversations, and everybody sits on either side of the spectrum about it. But at the end of the day, I think most people just agree that it was awful. It was horrific. So, yeah, open dialogue at the end of the day, Yeah.
And is it encouraging to see so many people out here?
It's so nice. Yeah, there's so many faces all across Manitoba to come out and be together and just be with each other. It's really special.
My name is Nate Rup Chen. I come out to show support that, with the assassination of Charlie. He was speaking truth, and that's why all these people basically are here to show support. And most people are saying we are Charlie now. We will not let this down. We still have to, because of freedom. Freedom is the most important thing. Free speech, freedom.
I wanted to ask you about Charlie Kirk too. What about his messages resonated with you?
Basically everything what he said and what he lived for. Because some people accuse him of saying some things, but they didn't listen to full Charlie Kirk. They didn't listen to the full segment or the full whatever the debate that he had. They don't listen to the whole thing. They just pick a line and they run with it and they just nail him. And everything that people are accusing him that whatever he is, it's not true if they listen to the whole debate what he was debating about. And he was a man that he was a strong family person. He demonstrated that in his life, and he was about the message of God.
Nate Roop-Chan and Lisa Chenier speaking with CBC's Rosanna Hempel last night at the Vigil for Charlie Kirk at the Manitoba Legislature. Well, there are many ways to describe Canadian singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan, a multi-award-winning musician, an icon, a visionary, a philanthropist. In the late 1990s, she went against an industry standard and did something that many at that time thought was impossible. So you got to really put your head back into the late 90s. We're talking about her groundbreaking all-woman music festival, Lilith Fair. There's a new documentary that's looking back at the impact of the festival.
And I was so young and green and naive. If this is what a major label looks like and that's what they expect from me, I'm like, no, I can't do it. Then I realized that I was missing that sense of connection and community. I feel lonely. This is a weird job, and it would be so nice to connect with other women who are doing a similar thing to me.
Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery, premieres on CBC Gem and on CBC Television. You can catch it this month. Rachel McLean is the supervising producer of the film, and she's with us from Ontario, from Warworth, Ontario. Hi to you.
Hi, lovely to be here.
I have to say, just before we talk about the film, that I should let listeners know that I'm really going to lean into this because I was at Lilith Fair in 1999 in Edmonton. Me and my girlfriends from Winnipeg, we made the trip, and we wanted to be there for this moment in music history. You were there too.
I was, yeah. I grew up in Ontario, but all my family on my mom's side is in the prairies, and so we made a plan to visit the Desjardins in Edmonton when it was that date, and I am so happy for that. But yeah, so I was there. We were there together in the pouring rain with, and just keeping warm by keeping close to get to each other.
I was going to save some of this for later in the interview, but let's go there now because I started it. What did it mean to you? Why did you want to be there as a young woman?
I am still a huge Sarah McLachlan fan, and a fan of all of the artists that played, and so really. Primarily, I wanted to be there for the music. I don't know if as a preteen, I was really fully aware of the motivation and what these artists were up against in terms of it being, something that people didn't think was going to succeed. But I was there for the music above all else.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But when we are in the crowd and thinking about me and my friends being in the crowd, there was certainly this understanding that this is something special and important for women. Yeah. Let's talk about the film. So the world premiere in Toronto at TIFF this past weekend. How was the experience?
It was thrilling. After working on this for a few years, I know that myself and the team that worked on it, you get a little bit myopic watching the cuts, cut after cut after cut. And so to be in a room with the audience experiencing it was out of this world. And we were lucky to have Paula Cole and Joan Osborne there in addition to Sarah McLachlan. And so having the audience be able to give them a really warm, welcoming reception was something special to be part of.
Tell us a little bit more about the documentary. Obviously, we know it recounts McLachlan's groundbreaking music festival, but how's it structured?
We were really fortunate to have a lot of archive, like 600 hours of archival tape from the festival. And so we mined through all of that to find the best performance moments and, other special things that were happening backstage so that we could really give the audience an immersive feeling of being there rather than it just being a talking head documentary where people are telling you about an experience. You really feel like you're in it.
The film also does explore the criticism of the festival that it faced. So one of those things was the lack of diversity in the artists and the music. How was that addressed by Sarah McLachlan?
Sarah, after year one, they came up against some feedback. People were calling it Lilith Fair and saying that there wasn't enough racial diversity and musical diversity on the festival. And so they took that to heart and they went out harder to a wider net of artists. And they ended up getting Erykah Badu, Missy Elliott, Queen Latifah, Michelle Ndegio cello, Deborah Cox. And so they also cite that with making the festival more successful and just a more interesting concert bill to be on.
I do also recall, we were talking about what we recall, that it was sort of, even though it was these huge artists it was somehow like, it's women though. Like I remember that feeling. Which even as a fan, I remember that. So how much do the artists reflect upon, how much they had to fight for this?
Well, we're able to show it a lot because they did press conferences every day for the festival because they had a policy where they would give $1 per ticket to a local charity or women's shelter. So in order to give out the checks, they do a press conference. And at these press conferences, they were asked the most inane questions, about like, is it a danger making women a genre? And like, well, we're not actually saying that, And so you can see through the footage from the press conferences what exactly the women were up against, in addition to them talking firsthand about their experiences.
Why do you think that it's had such a lasting impact, the Lilith Fair Music Festival, which of course had a reboot? 99 was the last time you and I were there. It had a reboot, I think it was 2010. But why do you think it's had that lasting impact?
It planted the seeds for a lot of people to go and do their own Lilith Fair. And we've got Brandi Carlile in the doc, who she attended as a teenager, and she cites it as being the #1 inspiration for how she has conducted herself as an artist and how she's organized all of these different types of concerts with that in mind of, well, the door's open for me, so I'm going to let all these other people in and we can share an audience and share the stage and share in success. So, there's that kind of thing. Erykah Badu, Queen Latifah, Jill Scott, they started their own Lilith Fair type thing called Sugar Water. And there's all of these different little ways that that festival just totally proved wrong the inane industry rules, but also showed a glimpse of possibility. And it's a bit of a David versus Goliath story,
What do you think the chances are that there's going to be a Lilith Fair? I guess it'd be 3.0 now.
I think the chances are pretty high. I've been watching how Sarah answers this question because she gets asked it a lot. And recently the answer is yes, I would definitely be in support of it. And she would love it if a younger artist would take on, being the face of the festival and doing the bulk of the work, because it takes a lot of energy. She recognizes that the 3 main years of the festival, it was all encompassing. It took up her whole life. And I don't know that she's necessarily interested in that, but definitely recognizes that something like a Lilith Fair would be relevant today and should be helmed by, a newer artist.
Thank you very much for giving us an inside look at the doc. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rachel McLean, supervising producer, Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery. I spoke with her yesterday. Check out CBC Gem today for it, or tonight at 8 o'clock. And you can also hear Sarah McLachlan performing new music from her new album with Q today, on Q Today with Tom Power later on the radio. Right now, Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Well, family and friends are grieving the loss of a Winnipeg couple killed by an alleged impaired driver Saturday. The victims have now been identified as 31-year-old Igor Popov and 25-year-old Carrie Bonner. Police say they were hit by a pickup truck near Kenaston and at IKEA on Kenaston. And Bonner and Popov's family and friends are holding a sacred fire for them. We'll hear more from them. And the chief of Sagging First Nation feels vindicated after a new report reveals some athletes experience more than competition but bullying when they play. More coming up at 7:30.
Still ahead, the new Winnipeg transit system has faced a lot of criticism. We are going to separate fact from fiction in the next hour. So stay tuned to hear what that looks like and sounds like. Also, a Lord of the Rings motorcycle ride. That'll be a fun story coming up. And we're going to dig into some criticism of the new rules to change the way people protest in the city. So that's all still ahead on CBC's Information Radio.
Today on The Current.
I'm Brian Stewart. The celebrations here in Kuwait City have been building through the day. The Canadian journalist Brian Stewart was a globe-trotting reporter during the golden age of television, with a front-row seat to events that shaped Canada and the world, including, of course, the famine in Ethiopia. Brian Stewart on how his journalism changed lives, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Bank of Canada this morning. It is expected to cut interest rates today. It would be the first cut since March. But as Peter Armstrong reports, the central bank may cut even more before the end of the year.
There are two very different ways to think about the Canadian economy right now. On the one hand, the economy's weathered the U.S. trade war much better than many had expected. The vast majority of Canadian exports remain tariff-free. On the other hand, the economy has clearly weakened. Jobs have been lost. GDP shrank in the second quarter of the year. So economists believe it needs some help.
It's almost a done deal that they will cut interest rates by 25 basis points.
That's Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC. He says the question isn't whether the Bank of Canada will cut rates today, but actually how many times it will cut before the end of the year.
And I think we will see them leave the door open to further interest rate cuts because, we do have an economy that needs stimulating. We need to be able to grow the economy faster to bring the unemployment rate down.
Interest rate cuts provide some cushion for Canadian businesses and households. If debt payments fall a little, maybe businesses can afford to keep employees on staff or even hire and invest. Maybe Canadian consumers can keep on spending. Right now, both businesses and consumers are stretched and concerned that the trade war will bite deeper and drag on longer. A rate cut from the Bank of Canada won't change that, but could help them weather the storm a bit longer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
The United States is taking the first official steps towards renegotiating Kusma. That is the North American Free Trade Deal. It comes as Prime Minister Mark Carney prepares to visit Mexico. He'll be there tomorrow to talk trade. Anis Haidari is in Washington with more.
USMCA sort of just works. MCA. USMCA.
That's back in late 2018 when then first-term President Donald Trump announced what would eventually replace NAFTA. Kusma, as it's called in Canada, took effect a couple of years later, and by July 2026, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement will undergo a mandatory review by all three countries. The United States is getting a head start. The U.S. Trade Representative just announced 45 days of public consultations, followed by a public hearing about how well this deal is working. That hearing set for mid-November here in Washington, D.C. And while this process is one of the first official steps towards renewing the free trade deal, it could also be a step towards renegotiating or changing it. Trump has both praised and criticized the deal and pushed extra tariffs on Canada and Mexico since retaking office. Many Canadians dodged more tariffs than in other countries because of Kusma, but those new tariffs on steel, aluminum, cars, among other items, have worsened trade relations between the North American nations. So almost certainly what's next for Kusma will be a point of discussion when Prime Minister Mark Carney and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum meet later this week. How Kusma gets renewed and what they might need to change, very likely to come up. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Washington.
As threats of sanctions and calls for a ceasefire grow, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will create an independent arms industry, one that can withstand international constraints.
We want to produce first for ourselves on a much larger scale and with unimaginable innovation.
Netanyahu made that announcement late yesterday, just hours after a UN commission concluded Israel committed genocide in Gaza, and Israel's military announced that it's pushing deeper into Gaza City. For more, let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest that we know about the situation in Gaza City?
The ground offensive by the Israeli military is continuing. From what we've heard, they aren't in the center, but they're getting very close. There are a lot of people who are trying to get out of Gaza City, though. They have pretty much jammed the main coastal highway, the only way to get to the south that was open by the Israeli military until this morning when they opened up a second temporary route just for a couple of days for people to get south from Gaza City into areas that Israel is trying to convince them to go. They say that these areas are safe. They say that there will be food and water, but a lot of people are very, very skeptical because these areas have been hit by airstrikes before, and really there isn't a lot of food and water anywhere in the Strip.
What more reaction has there been to the finding of genocide from the UN Commission of Inquiry?
Well, that was briefly a headline here, but as soon as it was dismissed by the Israeli government, by the foreign ministry, as fake and fraudulent, it pretty much dropped off. People have heard this before, including from former prime ministers of Israel, and it is seen as Hamas propaganda. I did speak to one person who is a family member of hostages in Gaza. She also lost her father on October 7th. This is what Karmit Paltri-Katsir had to say.
There is a difference between Hamas and civilians. And unfortunately, I think this war must come to an end so the Gazan people will be released from Hamas as well.
There's no indication that this report is going to change how Israel is acting, even though there has also been international pressure, including from Canada, which has called the situation in Gaza City horrific and has urged Israel to abide by international law. Without actually mentioning the genocide accusation, it has said that all of this has to come to an end.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik reporting from Jerusalem. U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania are greeted by the royals at Windsor Castle. The state visit is filled with pomp and ceremony as the royals join the Trumps on a carriage ride through the castle grounds, and Prince William and Princess Catherine were the first to greet the Trumps. Moments later, they were shaking hands with King Charles and Queen Camilla. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing joins me now from outside Windsor Castle. Crystal, what is the latest?
Well, there's lots of people who are still around Windsor Castle here trying to get a glimpse. Of course, they won't see anything. King Charles and the U.S. President Donald Trump shook hands inside Windsor Castle on the grounds, the oldest inhabited castle in the world. They were surrounded by Queen Camilla, First Lady Melania Trump, and the Prince and Princess of Wales. It was the future King, Prince William, who greeted the U.S. President and the First Lady as they stepped off of Marine One, the presidential helicopter. All of the pomp and circumstance of this rare second state visit is going to take place away from the public entirely. It will all happen on the estate of Windsor Castle. In addition to the President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, the American Special Peace Envoy, and the U.S. Ambassador are all participating in today's events. The events include the largest military ceremony ever for a state visit in living memory. This is the first time there will be a joint U.S.-UK fly pass. We know that the U.S. President is impressed by military might and royal pageantry, and that is exactly what will happen here today.
How are people in Windsor reacting to this visit?
Well, you know, it was really a bit of a mixed bag here. There was a large demonstration last night. 4 people were taken into custody, suspected of being involved with projecting very large images of the U.S. president and the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein up on the walls of Windsor Castle. There's also a lot of security and a lot of armed police around the castle. Trump is not necessarily popular with everyone here. I met up with 2 ladies from the community, Anne and Barbara, and they said they have absolutely no interest in the U.S. president.
Thank you, Crystal.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Crystal Gomansing outside Windsor Castle.
Still on your feet. Trying to make ends meet.
You're listening to Eve Jarvis, the winner of the 2025 Polaris Music Prize. A jury named his album All Cylinders the best Canadian album of the year based on artistic merit. Jarvis is a 29-year-old musician from Montreal. He says he feels blessed to be recognized in this way and to be an ambassador for Canadian art.
8 o'clock's when we'll meet.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. This is Information Radio on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This hour, Winnipeg City Council approved a new motion that would ban protests from certain areas. Council says it's their way of ensuring vulnerable communities are safe, but one local advocate has questions about it.
We're being singled out. I think we're being probably discriminated against. I think that they're trying to take away our charter and rights and freedoms to rally and protest freely.
We're going to hear from that advocate. He believes it is just a way to silence activists, so stay tuned for that straight ahead. Also this hour, one motorcycle ride to rule them all. We're going to hear from two Winnipeggers about how their love of Lord of the Rings inspired them to set a new Canadian motorcycle record. So stay tuned for that. And then at 10 to 8, we just got off the listener line with someone else saying the new transit system isn't working for me. This hour, we're going to walk through some of the criticism. And we're going to separate fact from fiction in terms of what we are hearing from folks. That is with the senior transit planner for Winnipeg Transit. So we're going to have that guest on just before 8. Right now, Heather Wells is here with other headlines.
Good morning. Well, family and friends grieving the loss of a Winnipeg couple killed by an alleged impaired driver on Saturday. The victims have been identified as 31-year-old Igor Popov and 25-year-old Carrie Bonner. Their family and friends are holding a sacred fire for them, so we'll hear more about that. As well, 3 former Vincent Massey Collegiate students are suing the Pembina Trail School Division because of a former football coach. They say in a statement of claim the division failed to provide them with a safe environment when they were groomed, harassed, and exploited by Kelsey McKay. The former teacher and coach is now a convicted sex offender, so we'll hear more about that as well. Coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi, how's this Wednesday looking?
We're starting with mostly cloudy conditions in most of the regions today, but today the skies will stay mostly cloudy. Some sun will poke through and a slim chance of showers. We're still spotting foggy conditions in some areas. As we get into the morning, that should lift. We're spotting this mostly in the southern part of the province. In Winnipeg right now, misty conditions in the downtown. Expect mostly cloudy skies. Highs will be around 20 degrees. And across most of the regions, we'll see 19 to 21. That will be the high for the southern part of the province. Up north, we'll see temperatures warm up from 16 to 17. Churchill stays near 11 degrees. So it's going to be slightly humid, but it's more like a cool day today.
Your commute's going fine. 788-3093 if you need to report something. 7:13 is the time right now. And first up, as I mentioned, it may soon become a little harder for Winnipeggers to organize demonstrations in our city. Yesterday, City Council approved a new motion. It does make certain areas off limits to most protests. The motion was put forward by Councillor Evan Duncan, who represents Charleswood, Tuxedo, Westwood. In the motion, he proposed a 100-meter buffer around places like schools, hospitals, community and cultural centres, and places of worship. He spoke to reporters about it. He says that at its heart, this motion is a safety measure.
We need to ensure that Winnipeg communities are safe and safe for all. I understand that protests are a right. However, the right to feel safe in your community and not feel threatened or any type of speech of hate towards you is also very important, and that this would address this. This would allow not only bylaw to be enforced, but allow Winnipeg Police to take our bylaws into consideration when they are enforcing. In the motion here today, it speaks to nuisance demonstrations. We're not going to stop, as Councillor Eadie pointed out, people protesting for their picket lines with work. This is very similar to when the province took action against protest at birthing clinics. It's expanding that to include areas where children might be, hospitals, places of worship. These are all vulnerable social infrastructure pieces that need to have some sort of parameters around them of what you can and cannot do within 100 meters. Not all demonstrations are going to be banned. That's not the point of this. Again, I spoke to it. I said that protests are welcome. It's a part of our democracy, but we don't want you showing up at schools. We don't want you showing up at places of worship. We don't want you showing up at cultural centers. We want our neighborhoods to be peaceful. That is a Winnipeg tradition that we are going to continue to enforce through promoting safe communities. If somebody wants that to take place on their property, they're welcome to do that.
And then why define nuisance demonstrations if you're looking at all of them? Like, are there extra rules for those ones? Or?
Again, I mean, Councillor Eadie had a point that when somebody's picketing for their work rights, their employee rights, those are something that are not nuisance protests. When people are shouting and screaming about how they don't like a certain group of people or they don't like health rights or whatever the case may be, those are nuisance protests that need to be guarded against these areas.
Any concerns about interpretations on that being difficult?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem we have right now. There's several interpretations, and it handcuffs bylaw, it handcuffs police, and we get these influx of calls when anything's taking place, and residents are frustrated that no action's being taken.
Was there a specific incidents that you're aware of that you're responding to with this?
I mean, there's been several over the years. It's evolved. I mean, in the early 2000s, we saw different groups against different cultures, religions. Then it progressed on to health rights. Then it moved in through COVID, and most recently we've had conflicts around the world that have flooded into our communities. I want to make sure that people in Winnipeg feel safe across the board. This is not about one group. This is not about one specific incident. This is about addressing these things at the here and now to make sure that our communities are safe.
Charleswood Tuxedo Westwood Councillor Evan Duncan speaking with reporters yesterday at City Hall. Now, for Ramsey Zeid, the president of the Canadian-Palestinian Association of Manitoba, the new motion is concerning. Zeid has organized many protests, including one in the spring that saw Winnipeg's Palestinian community rally outside the Rady Jewish Community Centre. He says that was a protest against members of the Israeli Defense Force, who he says were speaking at the community centre about the conflict in Gaza. Zeid believes that Duncan's motion is directed at community advocates like him.
The places that you listed are quite a few, and they're everywhere. So basically, you're actually banning protests anywhere because there's hospitals, healthcare places, schools, cemeteries, etc. that you listed everywhere. So it's hard to have a protest anywhere, and if you're asking to keep them away from anywhere that's vulnerable places, I mean, there are people that are vulnerable that, are they included if you're in their homes? And does that include those places also hosting people or organizations that are considered to be questionable? Or
the wording of the motion would look at 100-meter limit around whatever vulnerable institution is in question. So you'd be able to protest, I guess, outside that 100-meter buffer. But that I'm guessing doesn't it doesn't address your concerns.
No, it doesn't address my concerns, and I can't speak for anybody else, but we have always been 100 meters away from those vulnerable institutions that you listed, except for maybe a couple of times where, certain institutions have hosted basically people from foreign armies that places like the ICC or the ICJ have said that they could be probably committing genocide. I agree that maybe there are vulnerable places that can be protested in front of, but those same institutions should have certain rules and restrictions of who they can and cannot host.
So is it your feeling that this motion is kind of in response to to you and your group's protest earlier?
I think we're being singled out. I think we're being probably discriminated against. I think that they're trying to take away our charter and rights and freedoms to rally and protest freely.
Ramsey Zeid in conversation with CBC's Cameron McLean. Now, CBC did also reach out to the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg for comment on Duncan's motion, but did not receive a response as of airtime. In a news release at the time of the demonstration outside of the Rady Centre, by the way, Federation President Gustavo Zentner said the freedom of expression is fundamental to democracy, but, quote, when protests cross the line into intimidation, law enforcement and government officials must act to ensure the safety of all citizens, end quote. Zentner writing that at the time. The motion calls for staff to come back with a bylaw in 90 days. And we'd love to hear your feedback on this. 788-3205.
It's Canada's most prestigious competition for new short fiction. The 2026 CBC Short Story Prize is on. Send in your best original unpublished short fiction. Up for grabs, cash prizes from the Canada Council for the Arts, a 2-week writing residency at the Banff Centre for Arts and Creativity, and your work published on CBC Books. Contest closes November 1st. For rules and more, go to cbcbooks.ca.
Speaking of prizes, late last night, Montreal via Calgary artist Yves Jarvis won the Polaris Album Prize for his record All Cylinders. As you might have heard on World Report, the annual $30,000 music awards given to the best Canadian album. It's based on artistic merit, regardless of genre or record sales. Jarvis has been longlisted twice for this. This year, his first time on the shortlist, and he made it through to the win. Here is Yves Jarvis speaking last night from the stage after he was announced as the winner.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm really honored. I was just honored to be nominated at all. I'm shocked. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. First and foremost, thank you, Mom and Pop. I recorded most of the record in their spare room. I got a concussion because the ceiling is so low. But when I was recording The Knife in Me on the record, I recorded most of it on like no budget, and I didn't even think that it was the record. Like I was just, I didn't intend to even move back to Montreal. I was in LA. I came back to Montreal. I stayed at my parents, recorded the whole skeleton there, and I feel really blessed to be recognized in this way and be an ambassador for Canadian art. Thank you.
Yves Jarvis, last night, your Polaris Prize music winner for 2025. He also performed last night from the concert and awards ceremony. This is One Gripe. That was last night live. Eve Jarvis performing live at the Polaris Concert and Awards ceremony, and ultimately he won the top award last night, $30,000 prize for his album All Cylinders. I don't know about you, Scott Reguer. I think you're hooked up with us for sports. Hearing any of that Eve Jarvis music, he's got some Prince in him, hey? Like there's like strong vibes.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got you can tell the soul's in place there too. He's got all the stuff behind the music, just the words, right?
Yeah, and then when he lifts his voice like that, do, like that's totally, I don't know.
That was very brave, by the way.
Oh.
And yeah, I think you nailed it.
You know what I'm talking about though, right?
Oh, no, I absolutely do. The high notes are being hit there.
All right, let's talk about sports. Another drama-filled win for the Blue Jays again.
Although this victory in Tampa last night, Marcy, it's not something we've seen before. It came despite a controversial home run by the Rays' Brandon Lau, who hit the ball deep into right field where Toronto outfielder Nathan Lucas appeared to be tracking it down. Unfortunately, a Tampa fan beat him to it, stretching out his own glove and bringing it back into his seat on the other side of the wall. Replays of it were sent to the MLB Situation Room back in New York City, where they determined it would have been a homer even without the fan interfering. I don't know about that. Here is the best bit, though. The very next inning, Nathan Lucas hits a home run himself, which also involved fan interference and a video review. The homer was awarded, and the Blue Jays went on to win by a single run. Here's Lucas.
As soon as the replay was played, I thought for sure there was a chance that something was going to be overturned. I thought it was clear that he was hanging over the wall. Just didn't go our way this time. I don't know. It was fan interference, and I think when there's fan interference, there's got to be some sort of repercussion for it. Maybe the baseball gods were on my side. Just giving up a homer and then hitting a homer made it even out a little bit.
The baseball gods have been smiling on the American League leading Jays all season long, Marcy. So let's just hope they do the same for Bo Bichette, because the star shortstop's knee injury means he's going to miss the rest of the regular season. But there is hope, because there's no structural damage to that knee. He could return for the playoffs. Who knows how this is going to turn out, but rest assured, it'll be dramatic one way or another.
Well, we need someone to smile on the Bombers. They're getting ready for this weekend's game against Ottawa.
Yeah, and there was mildly encouraging news yesterday on the injury front. Zach Claros was dressed in full pads and a helmet. He was limited, with Chris Streveler and Terry Wilson taking first and second team reps, respectively. When asked about his star QB, head coach Mike O'Shea declined to comment, but didn't totally rule him out for this weekend's game. Still, as things stand, it will once again be Streveler behind center, which might have some fans nervous, given Streveler threw a couple of picks last week against the Ticats that were led to eventual Hamilton touchdowns. O'Shea, though, is defending the veteran signal caller.
I think people are forgetting what Chris has done for us. You look back at his run in 2019. I mean, it's common knowledge that he played with an injury that most people wouldn't even step on the field with, and he happened to tear it up and gut it out and help lead us to a championship. That kind of leadership, that kind of fire, it's still all evident.
Yeah, Streveler suffered an ankle injury during those 2019 playoffs. And in his defense, interceptions have been an issue for Claros as well this year. In fact, the two QBs have combined to throw the most picks this season. So whoever gets the ball is going to have to avoid throwing to the wrong team on Saturday.
That's where we're at. Let's finish with what was a memorable day on the soccer pitch.
Second most pretentious sports theme out there, the European Champions theme. It's back, the Champions League. And yesterday had a very strong Canadian feel, Marcy. 4 Canucks were involved, with one standing out above the rest. Brampton, Ontario's Promise David scoring on a penalty for Saint-Gilloise. It was the Belgian club's first ever goal in the Champions League and helped them beat the best side from the Netherlands, Eindhoven.
I'm just glad the coaching staff put trust in me to score the penalty. Taking a penalty with that type of crowd is not always easy. But I just said, I'm just going to score. I'm just going to pick a side and put the ball there and hope for the best. And that's what happened. So, yeah, no, it means a lot to have that kind of bragging right, to be the first Union goal scorer in history. But I don't want to be the first. I want to continue and score more in this competition.
Promise David, watch out for him. If he's going to show this well in the Champions League, he's going to have a great shot of making Canada at next year's World Cup.
All right, thanks, Scott.
You bet.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, a little bit of mist, some fog. It's 15 degrees right now in Winnipeg. It's going to be cooler than it was so far this week. A high today of 20, which still is above seasonal. 3 former Vincent Massey Collegiate students are suing the Pembina Trail School Division because of a former football coach. They say in a statement of claim, the division failed to provide them a safe environment when they were groomed, harassed, and exploited by Kelsey McKay. The former teacher and coach is now a convicted sex offender. The suit alleges the division was put in a position of power, allowing him to abuse them. It also alleges the division could have prevented students from being abused had they addressed concerns raised by parents and players in 2016. McKay himself is not named in this lawsuit. The 3 plaintiffs were students and football players at Vincent Massey between 2013 and 2017. Pembina Trails has declined comment as the lawsuit is still before the courts. More than 1,000 people gathered outside the Manitoba legislature last night to honor American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. Many brought candles and American and Canadian flags as pastors and speakers praised Kirk for his advocacy of Christian values. Kirk, a controversial figure, was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. Lisa Chenier of Winnipeg says it was emotional and shocking. She doesn't want her kids to be afraid to speak about topics they're passionate about.
Charlie was one of those guys, whether you agreed with him or not, that just impacted youth across the world. My daughter's youth, my son's a young man, and it was important to come out today to say, you know what, conversation can happen peacefully. It didn't happen peacefully last week.
The 22-year-old Utah man faces multiple charges, including aggravated murder in connection with Charlie Kirk's death. Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty in their case against Tyler Robinson. Family and friends are grieving the loss of a Winnipeg couple killed by an alleged impaired driver Saturday. The victims have been identified as 31-year-old Igor Popov and 25-year-old Carrie Bonner. Winnipeg police say they were hit by a pickup that veered onto a shoulder of Keniston near IKEA. Bonner's and Popov's family and friends are holding a sacred fire for them. Eddie Barahona says he met Popov about 10 years ago when Popov came to Canada.
He was awesome. He was the most beautiful human being. Igor was loved by everybody. I don't think there's a person out there that could say anything bad about Igor. He was a super person. Same with Carrie. They were both beautiful.
Barahona and Bonner's sisters say they want to see tougher conditions placed on people convicted of impaired driving, along with police check stop signs. Court records show the accused, Kuldeep Singh Gill, had been convicted previously in an impaired driving offense in 2016. The chief of Saging First Nation feels vindicated after a new report reveals some athletes experience more than competition when playing. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission is making 71 recommendations after hearing about the prevalence of anti-Indigenous racism, including taunts and bullying. E.J. Fontaine saw it firsthand with slurs flying at a hockey game in the community last year.
Our community goes through a lot of racism in hockey games, different sports events, and I'm really happy that it's been documented in that report because it's an issue that has to be addressed sooner than later.
Fontaine hopes Hockey Manitoba takes more meaningful action as some, like himself, have experienced this for more than 50 years. Developers in Winnipeg are eager to know where the federal government plans to put hundreds of new homes. Ottawa says 4,000 modular homes will be built at 6 sites, including in Winnipeg. University of Winnipeg urban geography professor Gino DiStasio says everyone in the industry is asking where the houses will go. He says the federal government has to identify appropriate land
that can be quickly converted to residential use. Remember that, probably a lot of federal lands might be buildings or other kinds of uses that aren't necessarily in residential neighborhoods. So there is a big step that is needed here to free up that land.
DiStasio says a site like the former Kapiong Barracks would be ideal. A silver alert has been issued for a missing 75-year-old man. Winnipeg police say Ernest Schaefer was last seen in St. Vital near Worthington and Fitzpatrick Road around 11 last night. Schaefer is 6 feet tall, a thin build, short gray hair and gray eyes, last wearing a navy or green jacket and gray jeans. You can see his photo up on our website this morning. Police say they are concerned for his well-being. If you've seen him or know anything about him, call police. A post by the police in Victoria Beach really blew up on social media yesterday. That's because they found what appeared to be a military-style bomb in the community's ball field. Police Chief Mike McKinnon warned people to stay away from the baseball diamond at Beach's Community Center. McKinnon believes the item may have been part of a package meant for a rummage sale this weekend. He says that is not the right way to dispose of vintage ordnance.
The message is don't do that. Call the authorities immediately and make sure it's dealt with properly.
McKinnon says a bomb disposal unit from the Canadian Armed Forces x-rayed the device and determined it was a roughly 50-year-old practice bomb designed for training and releases smoke upon impact. You can find more news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, to another team member, let's go to Abby Adiemi for a quick look at our regional forecast.
We're looking at a mostly cloudy condition across board today, a slim chance of showers in most of the regions. We're seeing 16s and 15 degrees in the southern part of the province, while up north we're looking at between 10, 6 in Churchill and 13 degrees in the Pas.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
16 in Winnipeg right now. A little fog still hanging about. Corey, the drive, how's it going?
Quiet drive so far. I haven't heard any major issues, but if you're walking, biking, driving, and you see something, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you. It is 7:37 a.m. and time for a story about two Winnipeg friends who've been recognized internationally for an epic motorcycle ride. Earlier this summer, Tiffany Taverner and Paul Bazilla rode from Winnipeg to Vancouver and back again. But they did it in under 3 days. That's more than 4,800 kilometers. They submitted GPS data and photographic proof, and then recently their ride was certified by the Iron Butt Association. Tiffany and Paul decided to name their ride after a shared love of Lord of the Rings. And as they told CBC's Jim Agapito at the Zena Moto Canada Motorcycle Shop, it's one ride to rule them all.
You were, I'm telling you. I'm Paul Bazilla.
And I'm Tiffany Taverner.
We have a motorcycle riding club called the Long Distance Riders of Manitoba, and we're also members of an organization called the Iron Butt Association, and we specialize in doing long distance rides in a really short amount of time.
What's the name of this, and tell me how you came up with the name for this challenge?
We're in the middle of Canada. We were playing this over the middle of Canada ride, and then the connection was obvious. It became
the Middle Earth Quest.
I really had to push the Iron Butt Association to accept this ride, and I had to argue for it. They did not want to start having some of those rides that were coast-to-coast rides. Plus, we've only got one national highway. I think it only makes sense. We have a Middle Earth Quest that starts and finishes in the center of Canada.
Tell me about the bikes here.
Well, as you can see, long-distance bikes aren't necessarily pretty, but they are functional. There are specific reasons for picking these two bikes, and that they are extremely reliable. They're also old enough they predate any computer-driven electronics, which makes them even more reliable. The modifications we do are, if they don't have them, we put a cruise control on. To get a bit more range, both bikes have an auxiliary fuel cell. We also put driving lights on them. Other things we like to do are heated grips.
Tell me about Tiffany's bike here. What kind of bike is this?
Well, this is a 1990 Honda GL 1500 Goldwing. And we chose these because they have proven themselves over the last 35 years to have been reliable as an anvil. There is a ride in the Iron Butt Association, a Canadian ride, called the TC75. And it involves going to one coast or the other and riding across the country in less than 75 hours. I failed at this once because we live in Winnipeg and I was already exhausted by the time I got to the East Coast. And that was about 25 years ago. And since then, I've always wanted to find a way to do that.
How does he convince you to go and do this with him?
Well,
not as hard as you might think.
No, not as hard. Because I started long distance riding in 2021 because of him. So to do the Middle Earth Quest, for me, I say it now, was no big deal, but it was a big deal.
What time did you start off
We left Winnipeg at 5 so that we would start at 6, went to Centre of Canada and took our picture.
It has to be cataloged. You can't just say you did it. You have to have proof. We were in heated gear till we got to Verdun, and now we're actually almost ready to put on mesh.
I almost put on mesh just for the daytime, and it was lovely. It was perfect temperature. It was about 25.
By the time we got to Calgary, it was cooling off. We had a really bad rain, so all the gear we ride, except for the mesh, is waterproof, so we're not stopping and trying to struggle and put on a rain suit. But then it got cold. So we have to put on heated gear. Merritt, on the top of the Coquihalla Highway at 4 in the morning, was 4 degrees. I kind of wanted to be in Vancouver, and I wanted to be out of Vancouver by 7 to avoid traffic, but we were still, what, 2 hours from, just from Hope. We actually had to stop and take one of our first naps in Merritt because we were tired. And it was insane amount of time to get from Hope to the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal, which is going to be our furthest point. And so our turnaround, instead of being what I hope would be like about maybe an hour and a half, was about 3.5, 4 hours by the time we got back to Hope. And by then it had gone to 40 Celsius. And it was 40 Celsius all the way up the Coquihalla. It was a hot day. So we also had a lot of other discoveries too, like you actually cannot get inside a gas station in Alberta and British Columbia after 10 p.m. They'll sell you gas at the pump, you can pay for it at the pump, but you can't get in even to use a washroom.
For men, it's not a big deal, but for me, it was a bit of a big deal.
What did that do to your body?
For me as a woman, I'm correctly built for long distance riding. I'm sitting on it right now.
We're heavy on the top, small on the bottom, and you start getting sores. After about 24 hours for sure, you're going to know you're in trouble.
That's interesting because you were saying there was a point where you almost called it in.
I did. My body was great, just my brain wanted to cash out. We were almost near Swift Current, and I was really, really tired. And he's like, oh, let's hold out. And I was riding, and there was a semi that was going to pass me. All of a sudden, I saw him pull back, and I realized I was way over on the left-hand side. And I said to Paul, we're stopping. We rolled into the McDonald's parking lot, and I was still seated on my bike. I was going into full-blown toddler mode where I'm complaining and
there was some crying.
I'm tired and I'm crying. I said, I just want to get a hotel here. I'm like, I know we're ride or die, but I'm really tired. And then I passed out.
That was the morning of the second day.
Yeah.
So we have another half a day to go to get home.
And I think I'm just so damn stubborn, being a Ukrainian North End girl, that I'm not going to let my friend down.
Truth. And then we had at least one more in...
was it Moosomin?
Moosomin, yeah. We were both tired, and so that was probably a 20, 30-minute nap.
And that was the last one, and then just beelined it home.
And you did it in 62 hours.
62 hours and 2 minutes, I think it was.
And you guys said that basically for the first time this has ever been done?
Yes.
This particular ride, yes.
Yep.
What do you want to say for other, female riders that might want to do something like this,
I think that anybody can do it. It's just a matter of that you have to be prepared enough and also have the willingness just to try.
That was the CBC's Jim Agapito talking with people on the, that was Jim. He's out again in a moment, but he was there talking with two Winnipeg friends, Paul Bazilla and Tiffany Taverner. They are the first motorcyclists to be recognized by the Iron Butt Association, love the name, for a ride that they recently did from Winnipeg to Vancouver and back in less than 3 days.
The night lights up with Arch in the Exchange, and After Dark will be there. Winnipeg, this is Odario Williams, and I will be spinning tunes for a special recording of After Dark, just outside of Art Space for Nuit Blanche, September 27th. Art, music, dance, all night. Nuit Blanche, proudly sponsored by CBC. Just visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
7:44 a.m. Wednesday morning. Are you on the bus this morning? Well, we've got something for you this half hour. The city says they've been monitoring public reaction to the new transit system. And yesterday they posted on their site criticism, but also myths. And they're doing some myth busting about what they say are things that are out there about criticism of the new system, and they're not quite true. So we actually have in studio with us a senior transit planner for Winnipeg Transit, and he's going to be joining us in a few minutes. Fog right now, 16 in Winnipeg, Brandon clear 12, Thompson mostly clear and 11 degrees right now. In Winnipeg, we're going to go to a high of about 20, and we do have a 30% chance we'll see some showers late this morning and into this afternoon. Well, next on the show, Love You Forever, The Paper Bag Princess, A Promise is a Promise. Those are some of the titles that beloved Canadian children's author Robert Munch has written. Since his first story in 1979, he's sold more than 80 million copies of his books across North America. On Sunday, the New York Times published a profile of the author, and in it he shares details of his life with dementia and his plan to access Maid, or medical assistance in dying. Yesterday, Munch's daughter posted a statement on social media saying her father right now is doing well and isn't going to die anytime soon. But all of this news sure did have a lot of people thinking about Robert Munch and his work and meaning in their lives. So we wanted to ask you, in Winnipeg, what's your favorite Robert Munch book?
Natalie Popiel. Well, when I was younger, I had this giant book that had a bunch of stories all compiled together. And my sister and I loved reading it before bed every night. Remember there was one about climbing the tree. I loved that one. Go up, 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 down, down, down. Loved that one. I don't know, every story in there was great, but that was a really good one. The way they were written, as a young kid, just was so, it was so appealing, for young kids. I don't know.
Do you hope that kids nowadays, go and read them? And is there something that you even look back and check out every once in a while?
Unfortunately, I don't have the book anymore, but if I did, yeah, I would love to look back at it and remember, yeah, I just have such good memories of reading those books.
My name is Nathaniel Cassiano. I love Robert Munch. When I was younger, my mom would always read his stories to me before I went to bed with my little sister. My favorite is Love You Forever. I think just the message of that is really, really good. And another one, I think my sister's favorite is A Paper Bag Princess. So both really, really good books.
What was it about them that you loved?
I think just how vivid the stories are, right? The illustrations are so beautiful, paired with a really interesting way of telling stories. It really captivated me as a kid, and I think my mom really sparked the love of reading in me, so yeah.
Hi, my name is Rachel Clausen. I grew up on him. He was super important in every elementary school classroom, right? I got Smelly Socks that I still have that copy, and I got it for my brother, I think, for my 7th birthday. So that's why it's important. The story itself, I hardly remember, but just the sentiment and the silliness is really important. Really special memories.
And what is it about that? Because you talked about the silliness. I know some people remember the illustrations. What is it that you vividly remember about that made you smile?
The sound effects. I've also read the book to my younger siblings now too, and just making the silly sounds and silly faces and getting really loud when it gets loud on the page. Yeah.
What's their reaction when you read it to them?
Everybody loves it. Everybody loves Robert Munch.
It's such a way with words, right? Or has such a way, I should say, with words. But all those books were written over many years. CBC's Jim Agapito. Jim had a busy day, obviously. Jim was out yesterday talking to people there on the University of Manitoba, Fort Garry campus. Also, thanks to videographer Travis Golby for the story. Now, because of Robert Munch and announcing, what it's been like for his struggle with dementia and also his plans to access Maid, we, after 8 o'clock, are going to look deeper at that. In Canada, people living with dementia can request medical assistance in dying before losing their cognitive functions. But how do providers then ensure that decision is made of sound mind? And what does that look like? Because there's been, as you might recall, different sort of timelines for Maid and also different rules for mental health and accessing Maid as well. And some of those are still under review. So we're going to have a conversation with the CEO of Dying with Dignity, and that's coming up after 8 o'clock here on Information Radio. The time right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock right now. And in the weather forecast, as I've been mentioning, that fog is now moved into downtown Winnipeg, just covering the tops of the buildings. And it is 16 degrees, winds are calm. And you might be on the bus. If you are, this next interview is for you. According to the city of Winnipeg, not everyone hates the new transit system. The city says it's been monitoring reaction about the new routes and overhaul. And while Winnipeg Transit is grateful, they say, for all the constructive criticism, they've even made some changes already already. It also says that some things, like the narrative that everyone hates the changes that were made in June, is really just not true. To help avoid the spread of misinformation, the city's posted an article on its website. It goes through what it calls some common transit myths. Adam Budnowski is a senior transit planner, and he's in studio with us to go through some of it. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So one of the myths I want to get straight in here that the city article says and tackles is the idea that the new system was created by people who don't use transit. But I understand planners are actually required to regularly take the bus. Is that right?
Not necessarily required, but in our division, the Service Development Division, the people primarily responsible for a lot of these network changes are leading the way. We definitely take the bus a lot within our small group. I took the bus here this morning, just now. I took the bus yesterday home from work, and so we're experiencing a lot of the same things that our passengers are also experiencing.
Got it. One of the things that people are experiencing that they say that was actually part of the old system, and now they say buses are full and they're passing us. But I understand that's a myth according to the article. So can you tell me a little bit more about why it might be happening to some users and why you feel it's getting better?
Yeah, so buses still definitely are full. They are passing people by sometimes, occasionally. I was literally taking the bus home yesterday, and unfortunately I was passed up by a full bus. But we are seeing the same things that we've seen year after year kind of in every September. It's a big challenge for us with back to school, everyone's back to work. And so what we're seeing with our current pass-ups or when the bus leaves someone just standing on the street because it's too full, is that it's kind of right on par with those pre-pandemic levels in 2019. So it is higher than the pandemic for like 2020 to 2024. But for 2017, 2018, 2019, we're right on par with that.
Got it. Let's talk more about why the city made the decision to post the myth-busting article. What was the motivation around it?
Well, we've received a lot of feedback. Tons and tons of comments through our 311 channel, and I think we're at 700 per week since we've launched the new network in June.
Is that like the most you've ever had on that?
That is by far the most we've ever received.
Yes. I'm just curious. How does that compare? Like before, would you have maybe a couple hundred or?
So it would be something like that. I'd have to double check just to make sure I'm getting the numbers right. But yes, much lower. What we have noticed though is that the ratio of good to bad complaints are about the same. So we are having people still call in with some commendations, but mostly what we're getting is people saying, I had my stop moved and I don't like that, or, the routes aren't working for me. I've been passed up by a bus and, I need more frequency on my route, stuff like that.
So you feel that it's just, it's important to myth bust. Why?
We want to make sure that people have a positive experience with our new system. We want to make sure that people know that it is out there to help them. We do want to help make the city stronger, and a good transit system is really important for that. And we need people to try riding our new system and have some patience.
Now, I'm going to have a whole bunch of the criticisms to ask you about. So I want to ask you about some of the positive things. Can you give me an example of what you've been hearing on that line about what people like?
Yeah. So one of the big things that people have noticed or that I've heard from people is just the ability to travel more places in the city. So I think as passengers, we often get fixated on our commutes to work and home from work. But what the new system does is it opened up a wide array of just different travel options for people because we have this frequent spine network where people can go anywhere, and the buses are very, very frequent.
I know what it's like to be in a public job and be criticized and read a lot of feedback. I'm wondering what it's like for yourself and your colleagues who spent a long time working on this system, and then what's it been like to receive the negative stuff?
Well, it's a little bit sometimes frustrating, but I think because a lot of us do take the bus, we've been experiencing a lot of these challenges. Like I was saying yesterday, it's complicated, but I think we want to make sure that we're always making sure that we get more experiences, we hear more feedback from people, so we can look towards making changes in the system, which is coming.
Yep. And I always tell people, with me too, I'm public for a reason. Like, tell me what you think. We want to hear what you think.
Yeah. When I'm riding the bus, I do often try and talk to passengers, talk to drivers, just to make sure I'm trying to get a little bit more of the scoop of what's going on.
So you guys are also open to making changes. You actually made some tweaks based on the feedback that was sent to 311. What are some of the critical changes based on the criticisms you heard?
So looking from summer to fall changes, we weren't able to implement as much as we liked just with such a short summer season, but we did implement additional service on a lot of our primary routes. So that's the Blue Line, FX2, 3, and 4. And then we also started putting our articulated buses, or those accordion-style buses that you'd see on the road, on Route F8. So that's the Henderson line, which we're experiencing a lot of pass-ups on in the summer. Fall 2025 is also the first time that we've been back to our full service since the beginning of COVID. So we've gone back to 100% service, which is a big milestone for us.
Are you open to doing more change because you're still taking feedback? And if so, when's the next round of changes going to maybe come to the system?
Absolutely open to making more changes. So that's another one of the myths that we've heard from people, and this may be a little bit on us for not communicating as best we could. But what we said, it was no changes within the first 1 to 2 years. And what we meant by that is no changes to the fixed routes in the primary network. We're definitely open to making some smaller changes at the stop level, small changes to the routes, expanding service into the later evenings, and adding trips on routes that are passing up students at high schools, stuff like that. That's what we're hoping to change for winter. That's our December schedule change. And then moving beyond that, we'll be looking for more in the new year.
We have had some calls, and actually we got one this morning, but we've had them throughout the fall and earlier in the summer when you're announcing changes. People that are concerned, you talked about proximity to schools and such, but to some healthcare facilities and some hospitals, and it's the challenge of walking. Like the stops move further from these primary places, and now people are walking further. What you just said is the routes won't change. So does that mean that those stops aren't going to change?
Some of the stops may change. We need to make sure that we're looking at this from a safety perspective and making sure that all the stops are safe. When we looked at to do our bus stop balancing or to make sure that we had all the stops in the right place, that was our prime focus. So it was passenger safety. We want to make sure that all the stops on the primary network, or those busier routes, have safe connections to cross the street so that nobody's going across Portage just trying to cross 6 lanes on their own.
Okay, so you're assessing it based on a pedestrian crossing safety, but in terms of a distance to a facility that someone might have to go, how do you balance that?
That's definitely something that we always keep in mind. So health facilities like hospitals, we always want to make sure that we have a stop in there. It may not be for the primary line. You may need to take a feeder bus to get there sometimes, but there's definitely going to be a stop at that point of interest or hospital.
Okay, so there's room for some changes that might be coming still. Yep. I guess just last, what have you heard about transfer time? Because that's the other criticism that at least here has bubbled up a lot when people call CBC. They say they feel like it's taking longer when they're trying to figure out their transfers, or they feel like they don't have enough time to transfer. Those two things are opposite, but that's the kind of thing you're weighing, right?
Yes, absolutely. So that's another thing with the pass-ups that we've seen too. I know sometimes when you're waiting for your next bus, you might get passed up, and then you have to wait another, say, 20 minutes for the next transfer. So we are keeping an eye on that. We're keeping an eye on where that's occurring, and then trying to add more buses into those frequent lines where we're seeing a lot of that happening.
Okay, so December, the next round of changes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being here, Adam. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Adam Banowski, Senior Winnipeg Transit Planner, to Headlines Now with Heather Wells.
3 former Vincent Massey Collegiate students are suing the Pembina Trail School Division because of a former football coach. They say in a statement of claim, the division failed to provide them a safe environment when they were groomed, harassed, and exploited by Kelsey McKay. The former teacher and coach is now a convicted sex offender. A silver alert has been issued for a missing 75-year-old man. Winnipeg police say Ernest Schaefer was last seen in St. Vital near Worthington and Fitzpatrick Road around 11 last night. We do have his photo up on our website. If you've seen him, call police. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather. It is 16 degrees, some fog in Winnipeg. Today's high is 20. 30% chance of some showers this afternoon. And that is what our Wednesday is looking like. The commute's been pretty good. 788-3093, though, if you see any problems, please let us know and we will pass it along. Well, coming up, as mentioned, we are going to be having a conversation about what the process is like for patients living with dementia who are approved for medical assistance in dying in Canada for Maid. This comes after Canadian author Robert Munch revealed in a New York Times article that he has been approved for Maid in the future to access it. We're going to have that conversation, though, here locally with the CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
Canadian superstar Sarah McLachlan is back with a new album, her first in 11 years. She joined me in front of a live studio audience to sing a few songs, to talk about the new record, and about a new documentary that celebrates her all-female music festival, Lilith Fair.
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The Canadian journalist Brian Stewart was a globe-trotting reporter during the golden age of television, with a front-row seat to events that shaped Canada and the world, including, of course, the famine in Ethiopia. Brian Stewart on how his journalism changed lives, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We will be keeping a close eye on the Bank of Canada this morning. It is expected to cut interest rates today. It would be the first cut since March. But as Peter Armstrong reports, the central bank may cut even more before the end of the year.
There are two very different ways to think about the Canadian economy right now. On the one hand, the economy's weathered the U.S. trade war much better than many had expected. The vast majority of Canadian exports remain tariff-free. On the other hand, the economy has clearly weakened. Jobs have been lost. GDP shrank in the second quarter of the year. So economists believe it needs some help.
It's almost a done deal that they will cut interest rates by 25 basis points.
That's Andrew Grantham, senior economist at CIBC. He says the question isn't whether the Bank of Canada will cut rates today, but actually how many times it will cut before the end of the year.
And I think we will see them leave the door open to further interest rate cuts because, we do have an economy that needs stimulating. We need to be able to grow the economy faster to bring the unemployment rate down.
Interest rate cuts provide some cushion for Canadian businesses and households. If debt payments fall a little, maybe businesses can afford to keep employees on staff or even hire and invest. Maybe Canadian consumers can keep on spending. Right now, both businesses and consumers are stretched and concerned that the trade war will bite deeper and drag on longer. A rate cut from the Bank of Canada won't change that, but could help them weather the storm a bit longer. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
British Columbia Premier David Eby will be promoting BC resource projects today in Ottawa. He's going to sit down with Prime Minister Mark Carney. As Katie DeRosa reports, Eby wants Ottawa to focus on shovel-ready projects instead of another oil pipeline.
BC Premier David Eby heads to Ottawa with one key request.
So we get our fair share.
Eby will meet with Prime Minister Mark Carney 1 week after the PM announced that 2 of the 5 proposed nation-building projects are in British Columbia. Phase 2 of LNG Canada in Kitimat and the expansion of a gold and copper mine in northwestern BC. Eby will try and put other BC projects on Carney's radar, including an expansion at the Port of Vancouver.
If you want to build an economy that is less dependent on the United States, you have to look west.
An oil pipeline from Alberta to BC's north coast was not on the initial list of nation-building projects. Carney has not ruled it out, however. Eby says there are no proponents for an oil pipeline and, like the Trans Mountain pipeline, would require tens of billions in taxpayer dollars.
My message to the Prime Minister will be, whatever you got to do with Alberta, I get it, but let's be honest with ourselves. If you want projects that are at final investment decision, there's only one place to look, which is in British Columbia.
University of British Columbia political scientist Stuart Prest says the Prime Minister must stick-handle the competing interests of BC and Alberta.
Given the interest in a pipeline, there may yet be interest in seeing one of those put onto the next wave of projects to be fast-tracked.
Carney is expected to release the next tranche of major projects later this fall. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The blades of Marine One in the background as U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania are greeted by Prince William and Princess Catherine. Moments later, the Trumps are shaking hands with King Charles and Queen Camilla. Trump joined the king on a carriage ride through the grounds of Windsor Castle. It is the lead up to a day filled with pomp and ceremony to mark Trump's second state visit. But not everyone is happy that the U.S. President and First Lady are in Britain.
Regarding his visit, no, I don't like him. They're all extreme right-wing and nasty people as far as I'm concerned.
Last night, 4 people were arrested after images of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were projected onto the walls of Windsor Castle. As threats of sanctions and calls for a ceasefire grow, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will create an independent arms industry, one that can withstand international constraints.
We want to produce first for ourselves on a much larger scale
and with unimaginable innovation.
Netanyahu made that announcement late yesterday, just hours after a UN commission concluded Israel committed genocide in Gaza, and Israel's military announced it's pushing deeper into Gaza City. For more, let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. And Sasha, what is the latest that we know about the situation in Gaza City?
The ground offensive by the Israeli military is continuing. From what we've heard, they aren't in the center, but they're getting very close. There are a lot of people who are trying to get out of Gaza City, though. They have pretty much jammed the main coastal highway, the only way to get to the south that was open by the Israeli military until this morning when they opened up a second temporary route just for a couple of days for people to get south from Gaza City into areas that Israel is trying to convince them to go. They say that these areas are safe. They say that there will be food and water. But a lot of people are very, very skeptical because these areas have been hit by airstrikes before, and really there isn't a lot of food and water anywhere in the Strip.
What more reaction has there been to the finding of genocide from the UN Commission of Inquiry?
Well, that was briefly a headline here, but as soon as it was dismissed by the Israeli government, by the foreign ministry, as fake and fraudulent, it pretty much dropped off. People have heard this before, including from former prime ministers of Israel, and it is seen as Hamas propaganda. I did speak to one person who is a family member of hostages in Gaza. She also lost her father on October 7th. This is what Karmit Paltri-Katsir had to say.
There is a difference between Hamas and civilians. And unfortunately, I think this war must come to an end so the Gazan people will be released from Hamas as well.
There's no indication that this report is going to change how Israel is acting, even though there has also been international pressure, including from Canada, which has called the situation in Gaza City horrific and has urged Israel to abide by international law. Without actually mentioning the genocide accusation, it has said that all of this has to come to an end.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik reporting from Jerusalem. About 900 tourists are stranded near Machu Picchu in Peru. A passenger train serving the area has been blocked by protesters. Rocks were pushed onto the tracks yesterday. A different bus company is taking over the lucrative business of moving tourists around, and local businesses worry they'll be cut out. Climate-driven heat is leading to more days of dangerous temperatures. That's the finding in a new report out this morning from a climate science nonprofit. It shows more people around the world have experienced risky temperatures this summer, including here in Canada. Anand Ram has more.
For more than a few days in Toronto this summer, umbrellas weren't being used for rain. From shopping bags to their own hands, people hid from the sun and the oppressive heat.
It definitely feels like it's been getting hotter, so I guess it's a little bit worrisome in general.
Now, a new analysis is quantifying just how much potentially dangerous heat the world went through. In the last 3 months, nearly 1 billion people went through 30 or more risky heat days. Christina Dahl is Vice President of Science at the U.S. nonprofit Climate Central.
We defined risky heat as hotter than 90% of the temperatures you typically experience. And that's to accommodate. We actually adapt to some extent to the environment we live in.
In other words, how people handle the heat in St. John's isn't the same in Sao Paulo. The report found Canadians went through 39 risky heat days on average, but you can blame climate change for adding 2 weeks to that total. Hussein Banakdari is with the University of Ottawa.
Climate change is reshaping the odds of daily weather in Canada, and people feel it most directly through extreme heat.
But beyond climate change loading the dice for hotter summer days, he says the heat also feeds into a loop of adding more carbon to the atmosphere.
Heat waves means drought condition. Drought condition lead us to the wildfire. Wildfire, CO2 production. CO2 production increase significantly, the climate change.
Meaning this past summer's heat could be felt next year too. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. If you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
Wednesday morning, middle of September already. How do we get here? September 17th. Welcome, everybody. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, your morning show on 89.3. Also at 9:90 a.m. on the app and on YouTube this morning where we're back. So thanks for joining us. Foggy out there. It wasn't in downtown Winnipeg earlier, but it's kind of moved in a little. So the forecast in just a moment, and also an update on what so far has been a pretty quiet commute. This half hour on the show. In Canada, people living with dementia can request medical assistance in death or Maid before losing their cognitive functions. But how do providers ensure that that decision is made of sound mind? We're going to have that conversation with the CEO of Dying with Dignity. And as you may know, the laws for Maid in Canada have been delayed when it comes to accessing Maid for mental illness. So we're going to talk about dementia, how it fits into that. And this is all sparked by children's book author Robert Munch. And the story that we started reporting on out of an article in the paper over the weekend, one of the big national papers, that talked about how Robert Munch has made plans to access Maid in the future. He does live with some Parkinson's and also dementia. So stay tuned. We're going to have this conversation. Right now, though, let's go to other news that is developing. Heather Wells is in with headlines.
Good morning. Well, more than 1,000 people gathered outside the Manitoba legislature last night to hold a vigil for American conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
Sing grace, how sweet the sound.
Kirk, a controversial and popular figure, was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. We'll hear why people in Winnipeg gathered to honor him last night. The chief of Saugeen First Nation feels vindicated after a new report reveals some athletes experience racism when playing. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission is making 71 recommendations. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
To the forecast now with Abby Adiemi.
Marcy, mostly cloudy across the regions with some pockets of sun making its appearance in a lot of the regions as we speak. In Winnipeg, 16 degrees. We're still noticing the foggy conditions, but that should lift as we get through the morning, and then we'll see some cloudy conditions. A slim chance of showers in the forecast. Temperatures will climb close to a high around 20 degrees in most of the regions. We're seeing 16 degrees down south, and up north we have 13 in the Par, 17 in Thompson, and 6 degrees in Churchill right now. Winnipeg, we are just around 16 degrees.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk has popped in. Also, hello.
Hello. Yeah, I got a couple calls on the commuter line. One from Kathy, who said she was driving on southbound Salter, and it's really, really backed up right now. Backed up at least to Redwood. Seems like it's something going on over the bridge, on the south side of the bridge. Not sure what, though. So very backed up. If you have any updates on that, we'd love to hear it. Also, Margaret called just to let us know about construction on Sherbrooke between Wolseley and Westminster in the right lane. Has folks having to kind of go left to get around that. Might cause some backups for folks today as they kind of attempt to zipper merge. But if you see anything else going on out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, you have likely been hearing a lot about Canadian author Robert Munch because of an interview he did with the New York Times on Sunday. Now, in it, Munch did say he's decided on a medical assistance in dying or Maid for his death. He revealed his dementia diagnosis to CBC back in 2021. He also lives with Parkinson's disease. Yesterday, his daughter, though, posted on social media to clarify her father wasn't dying anytime soon, despite his decision to choose Maid. In fact, she revealed he made that choice 5 years ago, right around the time that the world learned of his dementia diagnosis. But it's opened up another conversation about Maid and how it works for people living with dementia, especially because you might be a little bit sort of confused by where we're at with medical assistance in dying. Currently, Canada's law on medical assistance in dying prohibits eligibility for individuals who have underlying medical condition that is solely a mental disorder. So they've delayed what those rules are going to look like, and they've delayed it more than once. The first delay came in 2023, and then again earlier this year, the current government delayed making a decision about that. But when it comes to Maid and dementia, there are some clarifications on the books already. So let's find out about that. Helen Long is CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada and with us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So what determines someone's capacity to soundly request Maid? And dementia is obviously already allowed under Maid.
Yeah, so maybe just I'll start by clarifying. There is a delay on Maid for those with a mental illness. A mental illness is a psychiatric illness, so we think things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, things like that. Dementia is a neurocognitive disorder, so there's no restriction on access to Maid for those with dementia or any other neurocognitive disorder like Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, or ALS, for example, other than the criteria that's set out in the law by the government. So someone with dementia is able to apply. Capacity is assessed by the clinicians involved. So important to note that doctors and nurse practitioners assess capacity in patients on a regular basis as part of their ongoing work. There are some tools that they can use in doing so. There are individuals with expertise, like gerontologists, for example, that they can call in to support them if they need that. But part of the process of Maid is to have 2 independent assessments, and within each assessment, the practitioner must assess the individual for capacity.
People might be listening and hearing the term dementia, and I just want to clarify here because someone might say, I have a loved one that is forgetting a lot, but maybe hasn't been diagnosed, for example, with Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia. So the practitioners are looking for diagnosis, and as you said, they're looking for 2 separate meetings to determine a person's wishes, correct?
Yes, that's correct. You must have a diagnosis of a serious disease, illness, or disability before you can apply for Maid. You also have to be in an advanced state of decline. You must be suffering intolerably from either the disease or disability or illness or state of decline. And that can be either physical or psychological suffering. So once you've met all of that criteria, you can apply for Maid and then go through the Maid process, including the 2 assessments, to see if you're eligible.
So the advanced state of decline phrase, when you think about Robert Munch, that his daughter said that he made this choice 5 years ago and isn't dying anytime soon. So do they reassess you if you live maybe longer than maybe perhaps, I don't mean to sound crass here, insensitive, but maybe perhaps what your prognosis was?
Yeah, so I can't speak to Robert Munch's case specifically, and every individual is different, and he will obviously have practitioners involved in his care. People may make the choice in their minds, and I'm not suggesting this is the case here, but people may make the choice to have Maid. That doesn't necessarily mean they've been assessed and approved. They may be assessed and approved, but they may not be ready to pick a date. There's no requirement that when you're approved, you must instantly pick a date. Individuals can be reassessed if enough time goes by that the clinician is concerned that they need to reevaluate. So there is a bit of flexibility in terms of when and how often a clinician needs to do an assessment.
Do we know, Helen, how common it is for someone with dementia to apply for Maid?
Yeah, well, we don't have an exact number based on dementia. We know that 64% of people who have Maid have cancer. So of the remaining 30%, neurocognitive disorders, which include not only dementia but a number of other diseases, make up just a small portion of that number. It can be difficult to have Maid when you have dementia because the nature of the disease means that if you lose capacity, you're no longer able to consent.
So let's talk about that a little bit because you mentioned that there's ways to show consent. So other than verbally, how else can a person living with dementia request Maid?
Well, they have to be able to request Maid. They can demonstrate it through their actions if they have a speaking device, for example, or some kind of communication. The actual request form can be signed by a proxy if necessary, but the person must be able to consent. And clinicians are able to, blinking eyes, raising a hand, asking straightforward yes or no questions, they are able to manage consent for individuals who aren't able to speak. The underlying factor is you must have capacity. You must be able to make that decision.
If you were just diagnosed, can you put a request in, given the fact that the deterioration is inevitable?
You can request at any time. You may not meet the full eligibility criteria. So, for example, if you got diagnosed today, you may not be suffering intolerably.
I understand there's two types of requests. So you mentioned this, but I want to dig into it a little bit. An advance request and then a waiver of final consent. What is the difference?
Okay, so advance request is not actually anything that's legal at the moment. So an advance request describes a situation in which the legislation would allow you to put in a written request for Maid today. So let's pretend you've just been diagnosed with dementia. You're not experiencing many symptoms or early symptoms. You're not suffering intolerably. You decide that when the time comes, that's what I want to do. So an advance request would let you write that down today, describe what that end state looks like after considering kind of your values, what's important to you in your life, how you live your life. And then when the time came, a clinician would be able to go ahead and give you Maid on a date when you've met that full criteria. That is not currently legal, and that's something that 84% of Canadians would like to see legalized. It's the number one issue we hear about from supporters. So that's an advance request. That's a future state in legislation we're striving to achieve. A waiver of final consent is a document. It was put in place. We also call it Audrey's Amendment. So Audrey Parker was a woman living in Nova Scotia. She had cancer that had metastasized to her brain. And Audrey really wanted to spend one more Christmas with her family. It was her favorite time of the year. Unfortunately, because the disease was progressing, Audrey was really afraid she would lose capacity, so she chose to die in November. And we hear that often with patients with capacity concerns, that they die early so that they don't have to take the risk that they won't receive Maid. So the waiver is a form that the doctor and the clinician can enter into an agreement and say that I would like to die, let's pretend, I've been assessed and approved, and I'm picking October 30th as my final date. Often people have a milestone, a birthday, a baby being born, maybe a wedding that they want to get to. So I've picked this date, October 30th. If I lose capacity between today and October 30th and I'm unable to provide consent, the clinician can go ahead with the Maid procedure based on this written agreement that we've entered into.
Got it. At what point will you sort of raised why people pick a date, early, and they make sure because they fear that they're going to pass a threshold where they're not going to be sound enough to actually choose Maid, should that be their choice. So at what point will an advance Maid request with someone dementia no longer be honored?
A waiver of final consent, as long as it's before the day or on the day, you're fine. If for some reason the clinician was unable to provide Maid on that day, there is a clause in the law that if you demonstrate a refusal, so if the clinician appeared and said, I'm here to do your Maid procedure, and the patient said, what do you mean? And the doctor said, well, I'm going to give you this injection and you're going to die. And the patient said, oh no, I don't want to die. They can no longer go ahead and proceed with the Maid procedure. So there is some risk, and again, that is why some people choose to die early while they're sure that they have capacity and they can make the decision, and there's no risk that they'll pass that window.
And what about, if the capacity has significantly deteriorated, can a family member, for example, request Maid for a person with dementia? And this is
no.
This is a concern. People raise this as a concern, right? That someone else is going to decide that you want to end your life.
We hear those concerns, but there's no truth to that. There is no way for anyone to request Maid on your behalf, to agree to Maid on your behalf, to consent to Maid on your behalf. In fact, during the assessment procedure, it's quite common for the individual the doctor to ask the individual to have everyone else leave the room, and they specifically assess for coercion to make sure that not only is someone else not suggesting that they should have Maid, no one else has helped them to make that decision. They've chosen the Maid procedure themselves.
What steps should someone who has early dementia take if they're interested in receiving Maid in the future? And and they fear that the choice will be out of their hands if their disease is going to progress quickly.
Yeah, so certainly there's a ton of information specifically on Maid and dementia on our website, dyingwithdignity.ca, including videos, brochures, that kind of thing. You can also reach out to your primary care physician and speak to them, or the Maid Care Coordination Team. There's one in every province and territory. And again, that information is on our website, but those individuals are certainly able to provide you with all the information you would need about the process.
Anything to add, Helen, that I haven't asked you about that you feel is important to impart to people?
No, I think just maybe for people to understand that capacity is time and task specific. So when a Maid assessor is assessing for capacity, they're assessing for the capacity to make a decision around Maid. So does the patient understand their diagnosis, their prognosis, their treatment options, what Maid is, what will happen, all of those things, and are they able to consider them and make a choice? The bar may be different. For example, if you're managing your investment portfolio, you may have capacity to have Maid, but maybe not to make financial decisions or even balance your checkbook. So just to remember that capacity is very much based on the time and the tasks that you are being assessed for.
Got it. Which actually answers some questions that family members might have. Thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me and have a great day.
You as well. That's Helen Long. She's CEO of Dying with Dignity Canada.
Western Canada's best up-and-coming hip-hop, country, rock artists, and more are coming to Winnipeg. Winnipeg welcomes Breakout West September 24th to 28th, a 4-day music conference and 3-day music festival, including the Western Canadian Music Awards, and CBC is a proud sponsor. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Well, you just heard it. We've got some exciting stuff coming up here, right? Breakout West, the Western Canadian Music Awards. So many great Manitoba musicians are going to be in the spotlight as well, including husband and wife folk duo Burnstick. Here they are with Made of Sin.
As a child, I dreamt through each night. When would I find my home? It's been some time now, and still deep in my heart, I am aching. I need you now. Like a thief in the night, they come and take our love. Maybe I'm born with a curse, or maybe I'm less than a sideways glance. So I must be made of sin. Oh, I must be made of sin. As a child, I dreamt through each night. Your arms too far to embrace. May the light from your eyes never fade away. I am aching, I need you now. Like a thief in the night, they come and take our love. Maybe we're born with a curse, or maybe we're less than a sideways glance. So we must be made of sin.
Burnstick and Made of Sin. They're nominated for Breakout Artist, Producer, and Songwriters of the Year at the upcoming Western Canadian Music Awards. That show's in Winnipeg. It's coming up soon. It's September 25th, next week. Right now, speaking of another show that's coming up soon, let's talk about Radio Noon and their call-in today between 12:30 and 1. At this point in our program, we always like to pull Marjorie Dalhouse into the studio to tell us about the topic.
Well, how about turning on the mic there? Sorry, going off a little bit asleep here. I have a child, and a lot of parents out there are probably thinking, you know, kids are back to school, things could be great. But even though school has been in session for about a couple weeks, there's still a lot of emotions that kids feel. Maybe they still feel some anxiety. There are different emotions they may feel. So today we're inviting you to call in because we're going to have a child psychologist join us on Radio Noon to take your questions about what you can do as a parent to help your child if they're still not feeling settled into that back to school fall routine. Maybe you have a question about how to cope for yourself, because it is tough as a parent as well. So give us a call here after 12:30 with your questions, and we'll have some tips and hopefully some tricks to help you and your child settle into this fall routine.
All right, great topic. Thanks, you.
Marcy.
Marjorie Dalhouse hosts Radio Noon. The call-ins between 12:30 and 1, and you can check it out and weigh in with your story and maybe some advice too. So we all try to help each other here through September. Let's get into thanking folks who are working on the show today. So our live team, Brad Lillies, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Joshua Taifer, as well Heather Wells, Joni Nicolo, and Megan Ketchison in our news center. Associate producers who had items in the program, Chidi Akuma, Sid Sundance Horshig, Marshall Hodgins, Jenna Badosso, Jim Agapito is reporter in unit, and our senior producer is Leif Larson. Our show's producer is Nellie Gonzalez. Thanks, everyone. It's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. A little bit of fog around downtown. It's 16 degrees right now. It's going to be a cooler day than we've had this week. A high today of 20. The family of a Manitoba woman killed by an alleged impaired driver says she was a wonderful person who did not deserve what happened to her. Carrie Bonner and her longtime boyfriend, Igor Popov, both died on Saturday. Police say they were hit by a pickup that veered onto a shoulder of Kenniston Boulevard near IKEA. Bonner's and Popov's family and friends are holding a sacred fire for them. Julia Bonner says she is devastated about losing her sister.
It's going to be really hard to say goodbye to someone like that you grew up with your whole life. And people who go behind the wheel under the influence, it's really horrible because you don't know what could happen. Keep your family members close and everyone you love, tell them that you love them every single day.
Kuldeep Singh Gill faces 2 counts each of dangerous driving causing death while impaired, and failing to stop at the scene. 3 former Vincent Massey Collegiate students are suing the Pembina Trail School Division because of a former football coach. In a statement of claim, they say the division failed to provide them a safe environment when they were groomed, harassed, and exploited by Kelsey McKay. The former teacher and coach is now a convicted sex offender. The suit alleges the division was put into a position of power, allowing him to abuse them. It also alleges the division could have prevented students from being abused had they addressed concerns raised by parents and players in 2016. McKay himself is not named in this lawsuit. The 3 plaintiffs were students and football players at Vincent Massey from 2013 to 2017. Pembina Trails has declined to comment as the lawsuit is still before the courts. More than 1,000 people gathered outside the Manitoba legislature last night to honor the life of American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Charlie, 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 Charlie. Many brought candles and American and Canadian flags as pastors and other speakers praised Kirk for his advocacy of Christian values. Kirk, a controversial figure, was assassinated last week during an appearance at a university in Utah. Lisa Chenier of Winnipeg says it was emotional and shocking. Chenier doesn't want her kids to be afraid to speak about topics they're passionate about.
Charlie was one of those guys, whether you agreed with him or not, that just impacted youth across the world. My daughter's youth, my son's a young man. And it was important to come out today to say, you know what, conversation can happen peacefully. It didn't happen peacefully last week.
A 22-year-old Utah man faces multiple charges, including aggravated murder in connection to the killing. Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty in their case against Tyler Robinson. Developers and urban planners in Winnipeg have questions about where the federal government plans to put hundreds of new homes. Ottawa says 4,000 modular homes will be built at 6 sites, including in Winnipeg. University of Winnipeg urban geography professor Gino DeStasio says the federal government has to identify appropriate land. He says if it's hundreds of single-family homes, it would be best to have one large property that suits residential use.
If we're talking about identifying small bits and pieces throughout the city, that can still have some impact, but it's a bit more time consuming to identify, convert those lands. So hopefully goal number one is to really get some signature properties that make sense for quality residential homes to be built.
D'Estasio says a site like the former Kapyong Barracks would be ideal. A silver alert has been issued for a missing 75-year-old man. Winnipeg police say Ernest Schaefer was last seen in St. Vital near Worthington and Fitzpatrick Road around 11 last night. Schaefer is 6 feet tall with a thin build and short gray hair and gray eyes. He was last wearing a navy or green jacket and gray jeans. Police say they are concerned for Schaefer's well-being. If you have seen him or know where he might be, call police. We do have a photo of him up on our website this morning. The founder of an Indigenous youth volleyball program in Manitoba hopes a new report sparks change. The Future of Sport in Canada Commission has released a review of the country's athletics system. It spoke to Indigenous participants who shared stories of slurs and bullying. Jamie Menzies says the findings validate those who may not have felt welcome or safe while playing.
On the surface, mainstream sport would not appear to be exclusionary to Indigenous people, but it's more about acceptance and safety and feeling welcome in spaces.
Menzies says the document and its 71 recommendations should serve as a call to action. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
All right, let's have a last look at what's going on in the commute, Corey.
Southbound Salter really backed up, says Kathy, particularly like right just south of the bridge, backed up at least all the way to Redwood. This was about half an hour or so ago. So look out for that. Might be pretty slow going. As well, still quite backed up if you're trying to turn from the westbound South Perimeter onto Pembina. Very slow going there as well. Says Wendy. As well, northbound Waverly from up north Jamaica to Bison, also very backed up, she says. So heads up there.
So late in the drive, all this stuff came in. And Abby, the fog lifted yet, or are we still...
It's still lifting, still some foggy conditions out there, and I see the sun breaking through those cloudy skies. We still have a slim chance of showers also in the forecast. Southern Manitoba sits between 15 and 16 degrees at this time, and up north we're seeing 6 to 13 degrees. Highs would be near 20 degrees in most of the regions, except for Churchill at 11.
All right, you guys are the best. Thank you. Woo! Thank you all for listening to us this morning on Information Radio on CBC. Appreciate you each and every morning. All of your feedback's welcome on our listener line, 788-3205. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 FM, and The Current is next. Have a great day.